And so we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle, unfolding rhythm of a story. A story about a version of London that existed just beneath the polished boots and silken hems of a very famous era. A story that begins not in a palace or a ballroom, but in a place of deep, dull, and desperate quiet. Before we drift too far into that quiet, if you feel a connection to this space, you are welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a small, tin coin on a dusty shelf before you continue your journey inward. Your peaceful presence here is, and always will be, thanks enough. And if you feel so inclined, you can let me know in the comments what city you're listening from, and what time it is. There in your part of the world, it's a quiet way of knowing we're all resting here together, in this shared moment. Alright, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing. And together, let's allow the story to begin. The first thing you notice when you wake is the cold. Not a crisp, invigorating cold, but a deep, damp chill that has worked its way through the thin blanket, through your clothes, and has settled deep inside your bones. You are in a room that is generous with its corners but stingy with its space. A slice of a larger, crumbling building in one of London's notorious slums. A place the penny dreadfullest like to call a rookery. A fitting name, you suppose, for a place where so many people are crammed into nests not fit for birds. You share this space. Of course you do. Solitude is a luxury more expensive than fresh bread. Your roommates are a shifting cast of characters, their presence marked by the sound of coughing in the dark and the faint, sweet smell of cheap gin on their breath. Through a single, grimy pane of glass, you can see a sliver of sky, the color of slate and permanently smudged with coal smoke. Your stomach is a hollow, aching drum. It's been playing the same sad rhythm for 2 days now. The last of your coins, earned by carrying heavy crates down at the docks until your back screamed, vanished yesterday in exchange for a lump of stale bread and a sliver of cheese that tasted mostly of disappointment. And now, you have a choice to make. A choice that feels less like a choice and more like a slow fall. You pull on your boots. The leather is cracked, and the soles are so thin you can feel the individual personality of every cobblestone. Out in the narrow, crooked street, the city is already a chaotic symphony. The air is a thick soup of smells, horse manure, roasting chestnuts, unwashed humanity, and the ever-present industrial haze. You pass a woman with a basket, her face smudged with dirt, calling out for old rags. You sidestep a pure finder, one of the city's most desperate entrepreneurs, stooping to scoop up dog droppings with his bare hands. The tanneries pay a good price for it. They say it's used to soften leather. You try not to think about that when you look at a gentleman's fine gloves. At least you're not a pure finder. It's a low bar for self-respect, but it's the one you've got. You're heading for a grimy public house, not for a drink, but because that's where the whispers are. Whispers of work. It's here, in a corner so dark it feels like a conspiracy, that you find him, an old man named Silas, with a face like a crumpled map of London and a cough that sounds like gravel in a tin can. He smells faintly, uniquely, of damp earth, rust, and something else. Something vaguely foul you can't place. He saw you at the docks. He saw your desperation, and he makes you an offer. He doesn't dress it up. He doesn't sell you a dream. He just lays it out in a low, raspy voice. There is another London, he says, a hidden one, right beneath your feet. A city of brick tunnels and flowing water, and in that water, things get lost. Coins dropped through grates, rings slipped from soapy fingers, scraps of metal washed away from workshops. It all ends up down there, in the slough. The work, he says, is to go down there and find it. He calls himself a Tosher, a shore worker, A sewer hunter. Historians, a century from now, will argue about people like Silas. Were they a real subculture? A secret guild with its own slang, traditions, and territories? Or were they just a loose collection of the city's most destitute souls, all independently arriving at the same awful conclusion? You don't know the answer. All you know is that Silas is offering you a job title that sounds slightly more dignified than Pure Finder, and the promise of enough coins to silence the drum in your stomach. The job description is simple: wade through the city's filth in near total darkness, hoping to find something another person has lost. The risks are considerable: disease, drowning, getting lost forever in the brick labyrinth. But the risk of not doing it is starvation. A certainty that is far more terrifying than any what if. You look at Silas's grimy fingernails, at the strained, vacant look in his eyes that has seen too much darkness. You take a breath, the air thick with the smell of stale beer and fried onions, and you nod. The nod hangs in the air for a moment, thick and heavy like the silence that follows it. Silas doesn't smile. A man in his line of work has likely forgotten how. He gives a short, sharp grunted acknowledgement, as if you've just agreed to the terms of a very unpleasant but necessary business transaction. Which, you suppose, you have. He pushes himself up from the rickety table, his joints squacking like dried twigs. Come on then, he roasts. Can't go fishing without a rod. He doesn't lead you to a proper shop with a sign and a cheerful bell over the door. He guides you through a labyrinth of back alleys, each one narrower and darker than the last. The sounds of the main street fade away, replaced by the drip of water from unseen ledges and the scuttling of things you'd rather not identify. Your destination is a lean-to, a ramshackle structure of scavenged planks and tarps huddled against the soot-blackened brick wall of a warehouse. It looks less like a place of business and more like the den of some large, untidy animal. This is his storeroom. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of rust, damp wool, and that same foul, earthy scent that clings to Silas himself. It's a museum of crime. Piles of scrap metal, coils of rope, and stacks of mouldy canvas sacks are silhouetted in the weak light slanting through a crack in the roof. Silas rummages in a corner with the practiced air of a magpie returning to its nest. He hands you the tools of your new trade, one by one. First is the pole. It's a long, heavy staff of ash wood, at least 8 feet long, worn smooth in some places and splintery in others. It's topped with a small, iron crosspiece, like a clumsy, oversized tea. You'll try it. Silas grunts. You don't take a step without this thing kissing the ground first. He demonstrates, poking at the dirt floor. It'll tell you if the ground is solid brick or a soft patch of sludge that'll suck your boots off. It'll feel out the deep spots in the flow, itch your eyes, your hands, and your cane. All in one. You take it. The weight is unfamiliar, awkward. It feels less like a tool and more like a burden. Next, he produces a lantern. It's not a romantic, glowing beacon. It's a bullseye lantern, a squat metal box with a thick glass lens on one side designed to focus the beam. It smells of old oil and neglect. Keep this strapped to your chest, he instructs, handing you a crude leather harness. You'll need your hands for the tyrant for finding. The unspoken rule is that this week, flickering flame is your only connection to the world of light. Its enemies are water and wind, and down where you're going. Both are in plentiful supply. Then comes the uniform. It's a pathetic collection of stiff, stained garments. A pair of canvas trousers, thick as a ship's sail and patched in a dozen places. A woolen coat, missing half its buttons, that looks like it lost a fight with a family of moths and then fell in a puddle. The centerpiece is a strange and ingenious piece of equipment. A vast canvas apron, folded and stitched to create a single, enormous pouch at the front. Your poke sack, Silas says. It is to be your treasure chest, your rubbish bin, and your pantry. Go in one. Anything you find, a length of copper pipe, a dropped shilling, a lump of coal goes in the sack. Later, fancy illustrations in magazines will show men in your profession looking rather heroic in broad-brimmed hats and tall boots. But looking at this pile of stained, patched-up misery, you have your doubts. Historians will argue for decades about the uniform of the Tosher. Was there a recognized style born of necessity? Or was it simply the art of wearing whatever you were prepared to see utterly destroyed? You suspect it's the latter. Finally, the boots. They are heavy, oversized, and studded with nails on the soles and heels. These hobnails, Silas explains, are not for fighting. They are there to bite into the slime-coated bricks, to give you a fighting chance against the gentle but relentless current that will try to pull you off your feet. You're beginning to understand that this job is less a hunt and more a prolonged battle against gravity and sludge. Silas gestures to the pile of questionable gear now at your feet. This ain't a gift. He clarifies, his voice dropping. It's an advance. You'll pay me back from your findings. 10% of everything you pull. Straight to me, for the gear, and so, my guidance. You are starting your new career already in debt. It feels strangely appropriate. He sees the apprehension on your face. He puts a grimy hand on your shoulder, and for a moment, his expression softens from hardened merchant to weary veteran. One last thing, he says, his voice a low whisper. Down there, you trust your nose before your eyes, and you trust the rats before anything else. He pauses, letting the strange advice sink in. They live in that world. They know the tides and the gas pockets better than we ever will. If you ever see 'em running, all of them, all in one direction. You don't ask questions. You don't stop to pick up a coin. You just run with them. And with that final, chilling piece of wisdom, he leaves you. You are alone in the lean-to, with the smell of rust and the weight of your new life sitting in a heap on the floor. You pick up the cold, greasy pole. You feel the heft of the oil-stained lantern. You are a knight being armed for a tournament no one will ever watch, for a prize that is simply the right to wake up tomorrow. Dressed in your new, stiffly uncomfortable uniform, you feel less like a worker and more like a scarecrow assembled from discarded parts. The heavy canvas apron hangs awkwardly, its empty pouch a constant reminder of your debt. The hobnailed boots feel like you've strapped bricks to your feet, with the trier pole in one hand and the unlit balls, a lantern clutched in the other. You follow Silas back out into the maze of alleys, a reluctant apprentice trailing his grim master. He leads you not to a grand, man-made entrance, but to the muddy, rubbish-strewn banks of the River Thames. The tide is low, exposing a wide, sloping shoreline of slick, grey mud that glitters with shards of broken glass and pottery. This is the liminal space, the frontier between the world above and the world below. Maddened women, stooped and silent, are already picking their way across the mud flats. They are the mud archists, sifting the river's leavings for anything of value, scraps of coal, old nails, lost buttons. They are your surface-dwelling cousins in the grand, desperate family of scavengers. You and Silas, however, have a different destination. He points with his own trier towards a gaping black hole in the ancient stone embankment wall. It's a sewer outfall, a massive, arched opening that looks like the mouth of a sleeping giant. A steady, dark stream of water, thick as soup, flows from its depths, carving a murky channel through the mud and into the wider river. This is your door. There's no ornate handle, no friendly welcome mat, just the constant, gentle burble of London's liquid waste. Tide's turning. Silas grunts, his eyes on the river. Gives us a few good hours before she pushes back in. Stay close. Don't wander. And for God's sake, don't fall. He doesn't wait for a reply. He expertly picks his way across the treacherous mud, his own pole tapping a steady, rhythmic beat. Tap-step, tap-step. He makes it look easy. You try to follow, but your first step is a near disaster. The mud is not solid. It's a hungry, sucking mire that grabs at your boot and threatens to pull you down. You flail, the heavy pull almost throwing you off balance. From a few feet away, a group of ragged children, mudlarkists themselves, stop their work to watch you with detached amusement. You are today's entertainment. You manage to rent your foot free with a wet, obscene sounding shop. Your grand entrance into the profession is a graceless stumble. When you finally reach the sewer mouth, the first thing that hits you is the smell. It's not just one smell. It's a complex, layered assault on your senses. It's the raw, sharp stench of human waste. Yes, but it's mixed with the metallic tang of industrial runoff, the rot of discarded food, the chemical bitterness of gasworks effluent, and underneath it all, the ancient, damp smell of decaying brick and earth. It's the smell of a million lives, all their secrets and refuse washed together into a single, overwhelming perfume. You gag, a sour taste rising in the back of your throat. Silas doesn't even flinch. He's been breathing this air for years. It's just, "Boo." He pauses at the edge of the darkness, striking a flint and steel with practiced ease. A tiny spark catches on a piece of tinder, and he carefully lights the wick of his lantern. He hands the flint to you. Your hands are clumsy, shaking slightly from the cold and the nerves. After several frustrating attempts, you manage to get your own lantern lit. The small, focus beam cuts a weak circle into the oppressive darkness of the tunnel. It doesn't illuminate the space so much as it proves how vast and black the rest of it is. "Right," Silas says, his voice now a low echo in the confined space. "Light on your chest. Trier in your hand. Let's go." He steps into the stream. The dark water swirls around his knees, but his hobnails hold firm on the slimy brick floor. He takes a step into the tunnel, and his silhouette is swallowed by the gloom. Now it's your turn. You take a breath, which you'd immediately regret, and step over the threshold. The shock is total. The water is colder than you could have imagined. A numbing, invasive cold that seeps instantly through the thick canvas and wool. The current, which looks so gentle from the outside, is a steady, powerful force, pushing against your legs, trying to find your weakness. And the floor is a nightmare. It's coated in a layer of slime that feels like stepping on wet velvet. Beneath that is a shifting layer of salt. Sand, and unit infightable, lumpy solids. Every step is a negotiation. You use the trier as Silas instructed, poking the ground ahead of you before committing your weight. 2. The pole sinks a few inches. Solid enough. Step. You slide your foot forward. 2. The pole hits with a hard clink. Good break. Step. It's a slow, terrifying dance. Your lantern beam bobs and weaves, revealing glimpses of the tunnel walls. They are coated in a dark, greasy film, glistening wetly in the light. Strange, pale fungi cling to the mortar between the bricks. The ceiling of the arch is just a few feet above your head, close enough to feel claustrophobic. The sound is a constant, hollow gurgle, the amplified heartbeat of the city's digestion, echoing all around you. You are no longer in London. You are in its guts. Every wealthy gentleman hailing a cab, every lady sipping tea in a warm drawing room, every factory, hospital, and prison is contributing to the river you are now standing in. You are literally wading through the filth of an empire. And somewhere in this cold, dark, stinking soup is your rent money. The tunnel stretches on, a seemingly endless brick throat. Your world has shrunk to the small, shaky circle of light cast by your lantern and the feel of the slimy floor through your pole. The sounds of the riverbank have vanished, replaced by the symphony of the sewer, the constant gurgle of the water, the drip, drip, drip from the vaulted ceiling, and the soft, sloshing sound of your own reluctant footsteps. Every so often, a deeper, more resonant rumble echoes from somewhere far ahead, the sound of a main sewer line flushing into a larger channel. It sounds like the city groaning in its sleep. Up ahead, Silas's lantern is a tiny, dancing star in the oppressive blackness. He moves with a slow, deliberate confidence that you can only envy. You, on the other hand, are a bundle of taut nerves. Every time your pole sinks a little too deep into a patch of soft silk, your heart lurches. You are acutely aware of the cold water swirling around your thighs, a constant, unwelcome embrace. After what feels like an hour of this slow, tense shuffle, you see Silas's light stop. As you catch up, your own beam joins his, illuminating a junction. Your tunnel, a relatively small tributary, is about to merge with a much larger one. This new tunnel is a behemoth, a grand, arching cavern of brick easily 15 feet high. The stream you've been wading in is a mere trickle compared to the dark, powerful river flowing through this main channel. The air here is different, too, heavier, if that's possible, with a new, more industrial tang. Standing at the confluence of these two streams are other figures, their own lanterns casting long, distorted shadows on the curved walls. They are Toshers, just like you, or rather, just like Silas. They are veterans. One is a hulking man with a thick, dark beard that seems to have absorbed the grime of his surroundings. The other is wary and twitchy, his eyes constantly darting around. They both carry the same long poles, and their clothes are the same patchwork of stained, functional misery as yours. Silas raises a hand, not in a friendly wave, but in a simple, almost formal gesture of acknowledgement. The two men nod back, their faces impassive in the lantern light. No words are exchanged, no pleasantries, just a silent understanding. This is their territory. We go left. Silas mutters to you, keeping his voice slow. The rut's run is theirs, been for years. You look at him, confused. He can see the question in your eyes. There are rules. He explains, his voice a low rumble that barely carries over the sound of the water. Not written down, not spoken of much, but they're more real than any law that Peter's enforce up top. This, you realize, is a core tenet of your new life. The sewer system is a vast, unpaid kingdom, and within it, territories are claimed and defended. Certain junctions, specific tunnels, or stretches known for accumulating valuable sediment are owned by individuals or small groups. To trespass, to work another Tosher's claim, is the gravest of insults. It can lead to a shouted warning, a shove, or in the deepest and most lodged tunnels, a quiet, bloody confrontation where one man walks away and the other doesn't. Historians will debate the extent of this informal system. Was it a highly organized criminal enterprise, a proto-union protecting its members' livelihoods, or just a series of volatile, personal understandings? Standing here in the cold, dark water, watching the silent, tense exchange, it feels very, very real. Silas continues, leading you away from the junction, down the main channel. You learn the map, not the one the engineers have, but a map. You learn who works where. The beard owns 3 feeders south of here. Old Twitchy gets the sluice gate runoff from the brewery. They don't bother us. We don't bother them. It's simple. It sounds anything but simple. It sounds like a complex and dangerous social dance where a single misstep could have you wading into a world of trouble. He points his trier towards a dark stain on the wall, a few feet above the waterline. It's a crude symbol, drawn in what looks like tar, a simple X inside a circle. They claim mark. Silas says, someone's telling you this spot is taken. Might be a lie, might be old, might be the beard's mark. And a cheers just around the next bend waiting with a brick in his hand. This is the strange, unspoken language of the underworld, a code written in grime and fear. It's not just about avoiding confrontation, it's about survival. Wasting time and energy searching a tunnel that has already been meticulously picked over by a rival is a fool's errand. A day's work with no fines is a day closer to starvation. Respecting the unspoken laws isn't just about etiquette. It's about efficiency. You look back over your shoulder. The two Toshers have already turned their attention back to their work, their poles methodically probing the dark water, their lantern beams sweeping back and forth like the eyes of deep-sea creatures. They are your colleagues, your competitors, and your potential enemies, all rolled into one. They exist in this parallel world with you, sharing the same risks, the same hopes, and the same stench. A silent, scattered brotherhood of the damned, bound together by the filth they wade through and the unspoken rules that keep them from tearing each other apart. At least, most of the time. You follow Silas deeper into the main channel, the water now swirling just below your waist. The sheer scale of the tumult is awe-inspiring. It feels less like a sewer and more like the nave of a subterranean cathedral. A grand, vaulted space dedicated to the worship of forgotten things. Your small lantern beam is swallowed by the immensity of the darkness, giving you only a fleeting sense of the space you inhabit. The air is so thick with moisture that you can feel it condensing on your face, each droplet a tiny concentrate of the sewer's foul essence. "All right," Silas finally says, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous tunnel. "Here's as good a place as any to start." He gestures with his pole to a spot where the current seems to slow, heading against a curve in the wall. Current drops there. Heavy stuff falls out of the flow. Look for the inside of a bend, or downstream from where a side pipe joins. That's where you'll find the chew. Chew, that's his word for the sediment. The thick, gritty sludge that coats the floor of the sewer. It's a mixture of sound, gravel, coal dust, and 1,000 other unit and fightable things. And somewhere within it, hopefully, is the Tosher, the scraps of copper, old iron, and, if you're blessed by some forgotten god of filth, a coin or two. Silas gives you your first practical lesson. He plants his feet firmly, racing himself against the current. He then uses his long pole, the trier, not just to test the depth, but to actively stir the riverbed. He scrapes the iron the add along the brick floor, disturbing the layer of chew. A cloud of black, foul-smelling silk blossoms in the water around him. "Now," he says, his eyes fixed on the murky swirl. "You watch." He holds his lantern low over the water, the focus beam cutting through the top few inches of the dark liquid. He's not looking for a glint of gold. He's looking for anything. His eyes are sharp, practiced. He spots a dark, lumpy shape tumbling in the disturbed current, with a speed that surprises you. He dips his free hand into the frigid, filthy water, his fingers closing around the object. He pulls it out. It's a lump of corroded iron. Probably a bolt that fell from a wagon and got washed down a drain. It's worthless, but it's a start. He tosses it into the big pouch of his apron with a dull thud. Now it's your turn. You find your footing, which is harder than it looks. The current is a living thing, constantly trying to nudge you off balance. You plunge your pole into the water, scraping it along the bottom. The feeling is strange, a gritty, uneven vibration that travels up the wood into your hands. You stir up your own cloud of black muck, and it feels like you've just released a pocket of even more concentrated stench. You hold your lantern over the water, peering into the foul soup you've created. You say nothing, just swirling darkness. Your eyes aren't trained for this. You can't distinguish between a shadow, a piece of floating refuse, and a potential find. You dip your hand in anyway, your bare fingers plunging into the shockingly cold sludge. You feel around blindly. Your fingers close around something. It's soft and squishy. You pull it out. It's a rotting vegetable of some kind, pale and unit unfightable. You drop it in disgust, and it's instantly reclaimed by the current. Silas lets out a short, dry chuckle. It's not a mocking sound, just a statement of fact. You're looking too hard. He advises, don't stare. Let your eyes go soft. You're looking for the way the light catches. A bit of metal, even covered in slime, will throw back the light different than a rock or a bit of, well, you know. You try again, scrape, stir. Stare. This time, you think you see it. A faint, brief glimmer as a small object tumbles in the murk. You lunge for it, your hand plunging back into the icy water. You miss. The current has already carried it away. You let out a frustrated sigh. This is the reality of the job. The part they don't put in the thrilling stories. It's not about dramatic discoveries every 5 minutes. It's hours of this, standing in cold, foul water, performing the same back-straining, mind-numbing task over and over again, for the most pathetic of treasures. You spend the next hour like this, and your pokesack begins to fill, but not with riches. You find a bent nail, a shard of a blue and white plate, a single, waterlogged leather shoe. You even find a button, bone white and clean, which feels like a minor victory. This is the bread and butter of a Tosher. You're not a treasure hunter. You're a glorified refuse collector. And yet, the hope is insidious. It's a tiny, stubborn ember that refuses to be extinguished by the cold and the filth. Every time you stir the chew, there's a flicker of anticipation. Maybe this time. Maybe this is the scoop that holds a dropped sovereign. Maybe this is where a rich lady's diamond earring finally came to rest. It almost never is. But almost is enough to keep you going. This is a strange kind of lottery. The price of a ticket is your health, your comfort, and your dignity. The prizes are, for the most part, worthless. But the jackpot, however unlikely, is life-changing. Historians of economics might call this a high-risk, low-yield profession. A perfect example of how the urban poor were forced into occupations with incredibly poor odds of success. You just call it Tuesday. After another 20 minutes, your hand closes around something with a different weight, a different feel. It's small, round, and hard. You pull it out of the water and hold it up to your lantern. You wipe away a layer of black slime with your thumb. It's a coin, not gold, not even silver. Just a dull, brownish copper penny, worn smooth by its journey. But it's a penny. It's real money. It's enough for a hot meat pie. And as it sits there in your palm, heavy and real and smelling faintly of the abyss you pulled it from, it feels, for a moment, like the grandest treasure in the world. The penny feels like a small, cold sun in your palm. It's a tangible result. Proof that this insane, disgusting venture is not entirely fruitless. You drop it into your pokesack, where it lands with a satisfying metallic clink against the bone button and the bent nail. It's not much, but it's a start. You feel a renewed, if cautious, sense of purpose. You and Silas work your way slowly down the tunnel, a moving pair of flickering lights in the immense darkness. You fall into a rhythm of sorts, find a likely spot, plant your feet, stir the chew, scan the murky water, and occasionally, just occasionally, retrieve a small, grimy prize. The work is hypnotic in its monotony. Your back aches. Your arms are tired from the weight of the pull, and you've long since lost all feeling in your legs from the cold. As you wade, Silas begins to talk, his voice a low, gravelly counterpoint to the gurgle of the sewer. He's no one for small talk, but he seems to believe in practical education. He points his trier up at the arching brick ceiling. "See this," he says, his lantern beam illuminating the masterful curve of the brickwork. "This is the new world. This is Bazalgette's pride. Before this, before the Great Stink, this was all just hell. You've heard stories of the Great Stink. Of course, every Londoner has. It was the summer of 1858. A summer so hot and so dry that the Thames, which was effectively an open sewer, began to cook. The river level dropped, exposing decades of accumulated raw sewage and industrial waste on its banks. The heat baked it into a thick, foul-smelling crust. The stench that rose from the city's main artery was said to be apocalyptic. People walking along the river would vomit. The curtains of the Houses of Parliament, right on the riverbank, had to be soaked in chloride of lime to mask the overpowering smell that was seeping into the halls of government. They called it miasma, Silas continues, his voice echoing slightly. Thought the smell itself was the killer. Thought it was a poison fog that carried the cholera. This, as you know, was the prevailing theory of the time. The idea that disease was spread by bad air from rotting organic matter. The germ theory, the idea of tiny, invisible organisms in the water, was still a fringe concept, championed by a few persistent doctors but largely ignored by the establishment. The toughs in Parliament, they couldn't stand it. Silas says with a grim smile. Couldn't debate the important business of the empire with the windows shut. Couldn't breathe with them open. Tried to flee the city. For the first time, the filth we live in every day was climbing in their windows and sitting down at their desks. And that, he explains, is what finally broke the deadlock. For years, proposals to build a proper, modern sewer system had been debated, delayed, and dismissed as too expensive. But the Great Stink accomplished in a few weeks what years of scientific reports and rising death tolls could not. It made the problem personal for the men in power. In a panic, Parliament rushed through legislation, granting a man named Joseph Bazalgette an almost unbelievable sum of money, £3 million, a fortune at the time, and the authority to solve the problem once and for all. So he built all this, Silas says, sweeping his lantern beam in a wide arc, illuminating the vast, solid, beautifully constructed tunnel you're standing in. 82 miles of main intercepting sewers, over 1,000 miles of smaller street sewers to feed him, all of it built on a slight, perfect gradient, so it all flows downhill, by the power of gravity alone. He taps the brick wall with his palm. They say he ordered the best bricks, the best Portland cement, said he wanted it to last. He calculated the pipe diameter he'd need for the current population of London, and then he doubled it, just in case. Said, well, we're only going to do this once, and there's always the future. It's a strange thought, that this filthy, disgusting tunnel is actually a monument to foresight, a massive, hidden investment in the future of the city. Historians, of course, still debate Bazalgette's primary motivation. Was he a public health visionary, a man who, despite believing in the miasma theory, inadvertently saved London from cholera by cleaning the water? Or was he simply a brilliant engineer focused on the logistical challenge of deodorizing the city for the comfort of the wealthy? The result was the same, but the intent is a murkier subject. Before Bazalgette's system, the sewers, such as they were, simply dumped everything straight into the Thames in the middle of the city. His new system intercepted all of it, channeling it eastward, far downstream from the city centre, where it was then released into the river on the outgoing tide, to be washed harmlessly out to sea, or at least, that was the theory. So this, Silas concludes, gesturing at the dog, flowing water around your legs, this river of muck we call our office, it's the very thing that saved London. Funny, ain't it? It is funny. You are standing in a masterpiece of Victorian engineering, a life-saving public work of unprecedented scale, a hidden wonder of the modern world, and your job is to pick through its leavings like a carrion bird, hunting for scraps. You are a parasite living on the body of a savior. The irony is as thick and unpleasant as the air you're breathing. The idea that you're wading through a national treasure doesn't make the water any warmer, but it does change your perspective, just slightly. As you continue your slow journey, you start to notice the details that Silas pointed out. You are no longer just in a tunnel. You are inside a piece of architecture. You run your free hand along the wall. The bricks are slick with slime, but beneath it, you can feel their solid, uniform shape. They are perfectly laid. The mortar joints between them still tight and clean after years in this corrosive environment. This wasn't just slapped together. This was built with pride. Bazalgette's workers, the Nervwise, were legendary for their toughness and skill, and you're standing inside a testament to their labor. As your lantern beam sweeps across the ceiling, you see how the arches are perfect, self-supporting curve. It's a design as old as the Romans, executed on a scale they could have only dreamed of. Every so often, you pass a smaller pipe entering the main tunnel from high up on the wall. These are the street sewers, the smaller veins and capillaries feeding this great brick artery. Each one adds its own small flow to the river you're in. A constant, quiet trickle from the world above. You even start to appreciate the aesthetics of the place. The way the focused beam of your lantern catches the curve of the tunnel, creating a traveling circle of light that seems to carve a space for you out of the infinite blackness. The way the light reflects off the water's surface, painting shifting, rippling patterns on the vaulted ceiling above. If you could ignore the smell, and the cold, and the constant, low-level fear, you might almost find it beautiful, like being inside a strange, dark, wet cathedral. "Look here," Silas says, stopping and pointing his triad to a spot on the floor. His lantern illuminates it clearly. The floor of the sewer is not flat. The central channel, where the main flow is a half circle, a concave trough, but on either side of it are wide, flat ledges, or hunches, running the length of the tunnel, just a few inches above the normal water level. Bazalgette's little gift to us, Silas remarks, walkways for the FLOshers. He explains that the system, brilliant as it is, needs maintenance. Salt and heavy debris can build up, creating blockages. So teams of men, official city employees with actual wages and pensions, periodically walk these tunnels. Their job is to identify and clear these blockages. Sometimes they do it by opening sluice gates further up the line, releasing a torrent of water to scour the pipes clean. Sometimes they have to get in there with shovels and brute force. You look at the walkway. It's only a few feet wide, and it's still coated in a layer of slippery, treacherous slime. But it's dry land, or at least, drier land. It represents a level of professional legitimacy that feels a world away from your current situation. The FLOshers have a uniform, proper equipment, and the backing of the city. You have cast off clothes in the constant threat of drowning. They are the official caretakers. You are an unofficial, unwanted parasite. This leads to a strange, uncanoodled relationship. In a way, the FLOshers are your benefactors. Their work in keeping the sewers flowing is what makes your own work possible. But they are also your natural enemy. If a flusher patrol were to find you and Silas down here, they wouldn't be pleased. While there wasn't a specific law against Tosher finding in these new sewers, the authorities considered it trespassing, and dangerously so. You could be fined, or worse, arrested for vagrancy. So the sound of approaching uniformed footsteps is another terror to add to the list. You continue on, sticking to the central channel. The walkways are for running, not for working. The Tosher is in the water. After a while, the grand, perfectly circular tunnel begins to change. The flawless brickwork gives way to rougher, more uneven stone. The shape becomes less of a perfect toe and more of a crumbling, misshapen arch. The air changes too, taking on an older, musty smell, like a damp cellar that hasn't been opened in a century. "We're leaving the new works," Silas explains, his voice dropping as if in reverence for the dead. "We're entering the old lands now, the buried rivers." Before Bazalgette, London's main sewers were its natural rivers and streams. The Fleet, the Mulbrook, the Tyburn. Once, they had been clean, open waterways, flowing through meadows and fields. But as the city grew, they became convenient dumping grounds for waste. They were built over, arched with brick, and slowly, piece by piece, they were buried, transformed from living rivers into subterranean drains. They are older, more fragile, and infinitely more dangerous than the modern tunnels. Historians and urban explorers of the future will become obsessed with these lost rivers, tracing their phantom paths through the modern city grid. They will argue over their exact routes and debate the origins of their names. For them, it is a romantic, academic pursuit. For you, it's just a different, more dangerous kind of workplace. The bricks are less reliable, the floor is more uneven, and the ghosts of the old city feel much, much closer. You're now walking not just in the city's waste, but in its history, a history that it tried to pave over and forget. The transition is unmistakable. You pass through a crude, arching brick bulkhead, and it feels like stepping back in time. The air immediately feels heavier, colder, and carries the scent of something more ancient than yesterday's refuse. It smells of wet earth, decaying roots, and stone that has been damp for centuries. You have left Bazalgette's clean, sweeping lines undented and chaotic. This is the buried river fleet, or what's left of it. Once, it was a wide, navigable river. Roman galleys might have sailed on the waters that now gurgle and splash around your knees, but centuries of city life have choked it, caged it, and turned it into this dark, forgotten passage. The tunnel is no longer a perfect circle. It's a rough, barrel-vaulted arch made of mismatched stone and brick from different eras. In some places, the original riverbank of packed earth is still visible behind crumbling sections of wall. The floor here is not the carefully laid brick of the new sewers. It's a treacherous, uneven bed of the original river, covered in a deep, thick layer of silt that feels terrifyingly soft under your pole. Each step requires more care, more concentration. The trier is no longer just a helpful guide, it's a lifeline. You pocket ahead of you, feeling for sudden drop-offs or deep pools of sludge that could swallow you whole. Mind your footing, Silas warns, his voice tight. The fleet's a tricky beast. She don't like being in a cage. He's right. The current here feels different. It's less predictable, swirling in strange eddies and pulling with an erratic force. This isn't the gentle, engineered gradient of the modern system. This is a real river, however diminished, fighting against its prison. The finds are different here, too. In Bazalgette's sewers, you find the detritus of the modern industrial city. Machine parts, copper wire, lost coins from the new reign of Queen Victoria. Here, the chew is older, deeper. Your pole scrapes against things that have been buried for much, much longer. After a few minutes of careful probing, your hand closes around something small and smooth. You pull it out and wash it in the murky water. It's a fragment of a clay pipe, the bowl small and delicately curved. Silas glances at it. Tudor. Maybe, he grunts, worthless, but old. You are holding a piece of casual litter from a man who might have watched Shakespeare's plays as new productions. The thought is dizzying. You drop it back into the flow, a tiny offering to the river's ghosts. You find other things. A thick, green-tinged piece of glass, the bottom of an old wine bottle, a buckled shoe with a square toe, the leather impossibly hard and blackened. These are not just refuse. They are artifacts. You are wading through a liquid archaeological dig. The problem is, there's no museum willing to pay for this stuff. To you, it's just more junk, heavier and more awkward to carry than a simple penny. The true nature of these buried rivers is a point of contention for scholars. Some see them as purely functional drains, while others argue they retained a kind of folk memory, becoming subjects of myth and local legend long after they vanished from sight. People living above would report strange dampness in their cellars or gurgling sounds from beneath the floorboards, attributing them to the ghost of the old river, down here, surrounded by the groaning, ancient stonework. The idea of a river's ghost doesn't seem so far-fetched. The real danger of these older tunnels, Silas explains, is their structural integrity. They were not built with the same precision or quality materials as the new system. Heavy rains in the city above could put immense pressure on these old, crumbling arches. Collapses were not unheard of. A section of wall giving way, or ceiling caving in. It could happen without warning, burying a man in a filthy, ignominious grave. You pass a section where a massive crack runs up the wall, a dark fissure from which a steady trickle of clean, cold groundwater weeps. It creates a strange, localized curtain of rain inside the tunnel. A clean spot in a world of filth. You instinctively hurry past it, eyeing the crack with suspicion. Then you see it, scrawled on the wall, in what looks like chalk, just above the waterline, is a crude drawing of a skull. It's not a claim mark like the X in a circle. It's a warning. "Rat soul," Silas said, pointing to a section of the ceiling. "Loose brick up there. One good vibration and it'll come down. Someone's telling us to tread lightly." The community of the tunnels, it seems, has its own public safety announcements. A simple, stark symbol to communicate a deadly hazard. It's another layer of the unspoken language of this place. A code born of shared danger. You heed the warning, moving to the far side of the tunnel. Your steps are soft and quiet as you can manage in your heavy CLOM ping boots. The silence in this section feels different, heavier, charged with the potential energy of falling rock. You don't breathe easy again until you are a good 50 feet past the chalk skull, back in a section of tunnel that looks, and feels, marginally more stable. You are haunting a ruin, and you are constantly reminded that you are not welcome. As you venture deeper into the tangled network of old and new tunnels, you start to realize that you're most important to listen to the pole in your hand or the lantern on your chest. It's your nose, the ever-present, overarching stench of the sewer is not one monotonous note, but a complex chord, and learning to pick out the individual tones is a matter of life and death. You thought the smell was as bad as it could get at the sewer mouth, but you were wrong. That was just the overture. Down here, in the belly of the beast, you are treated to the full symphony. Each tributary, each junction, has its own unique aromatic signature. Silas, a connoisseur of stench, becomes your teacher. He'll pause, lift his head, and sniff the air like a hound. "Smell that?" he asks. As you pass a large pipe joining your tunnel from the side, you sniff. Beneath the usual foulness, there's a sharp, coppery, almost metallic tang. "The shambles," he says, "the runoff from the Smithfield slaughterhouses. Blood, guts, and what look. The chew-down current from here is sometimes lumpy. You make a mental note to be more careful with what you grab out of the water for the next 100 yards. A little further on, a different scent begins to dominate. It's a bitter, chemical smell, acrid and biting, that makes your eyes water. Gasworks, Silas identifies immediately. Effluent from the coal gas plant. Nasty stuff. Rots your boots and eats the mortar. Don't linger here. The air itself is poison. You notice the brickwork in this section is paler, seemingly bleached and crumbling at the edges. And you quicken your pace, taking shallow breaths. There are other, more natural smells to learn. You learn to identify the yeasty, slightly sweet smell that signals the waste from a brewery. The greasy, fatty scent from the city's kitchens. The cloying, medicinal aroma that indicates you're downstream from a hospital. Each smell tells a story about the part of London that is living and breathing directly above your head. It's a reverse map of the city, drawn in odors. You are navigating by the invisible waste of a million strangers. This idea, that different sections of the city produced chemically distinct sewage, is something that Victorian scientists and social reformers were just beginning to study seriously. They took samples, analyzed the contents, and tried to correlate the flavor of the sewage with the health and industry of the district above. Some historians argue this was the very beginning of modern environmental science, a nascent attempt to understand a city as a single, complex organism by analyzing its excretions. You're just trying not to gag. But some smells are not just unpleasant or informative, they are alarms. You enter a smaller, less ventilated side tunnel. The air is still, thick, and heavy, and it has a new quality, a faint, slightly sweet, rotten egg smell. You barely notice it, but Silas freezes instantly. He holds up a hand, stopping you in your tracks. He lowers his lantern, bringing the flame down closer to the surface of the water. "What is it?" you whisper, your voice sounding loud in the sudden quiet. The sweet smell, he murmurs, his eyes fixed on the flame. Foul air, sewer gas. He's talking about a deadly cocktail of gases that can accumulate in poorly ventilated sections of the sewer. Methane, hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, carbon monoxide. It's born from the decomposition of organic matter in the absence of oxygen. It's heavier than air, so it settles in low spots and stagnant tunnels. In low concentrations, it can cause dizziness, headaches, and nausea. In high concentrations, it suffocates you, displacing the oxygen from your lungs. It's an invisible, silent killer. Worse, some of the gases, particularly methane, are highly flammable. A single spark in a pocket of concentrated sewer gas could cause a massive explosion, a violent blast of fire and force that would rip through the tunnels. Stories of such disasters are a staple of Tosher lore. Men blown to pieces or incinerated in an instant, their only mistake being to light a pipe in the wrong place. Silas watches his lantern flame intently. He's using it as a crude gas detector. If the flame grows taller and burns with a bluish tint, it means flammable gas is present. If it shrinks and sputters, it means the oxygen is being displaced, and the air is becoming unbreathable. For a tense moment, the flame flickers normally. The concentration here is low. Not enough to explode, not yet enough to suffocate, but enough to be a warning. "We go back," Silas says, his voice firm and quiet. Slowly, no sudden moves. He begins to back away, his pole tapping gently, his movements fluid and deliberate. You follow his lead, your heart pounding in your chest. The sweet, sickly smell of the gas seems to cling to the inside of your nostrils. Every instinct is screaming at you to turn and run. But you force yourself to copy Silas's calm retreat. You are acutely aware of the open flame on your chest. No longer a comfort but a potential bomb trigger. You back out of the side tunnel and into the main channel, where the moving air feels as fresh as a sea breeze by comparison. Only then do you allow yourself to take a deep, shaky breath. You have just had your first encounter with one of the sewer's invisible monsters. It's a lesson you won't forget. The sewer can kill you with what you can see, like a sudden flood or a collapsing wall. But it can also kill you with what you can't see, with a silent, sweet-smelling breath. The close call with the foul air leaves you shaken. The darkness, which was merely oppressive before, now feels actively menacing, hiding invisible threats in its stagnant corners. You stick closer to Silas, your eyes darting nervously into the mouths of other small, uninviting side tunnels. The sweet, sickly smell of the gas seems to linger in your memory, a phantom scent that makes you paranoid. Silas seems to sense your unease. Every Tosher has a gas story, he says, his voice matter of fact. The ones that don't, well, they ain't to shear us no more. It's his grim way of offering reassurance. This fear is normal. It's part of the job description. He decides it's time for another lesson, perhaps to take your mind off the invisible poison. He stops and holds up his lantern, illuminating the brickwork of the main tunnel. The gas is one beast, he says. They call it marsh gas or fire damp. But there's another beast, one you can't smell at all, and it's just as hungry. He's talking about what the engineers call choke damp, carbon dioxide. It's also a byproduct of decomposition and, like the foul air, it's heavier than air and can collect in low, unventilated spaces. Unlike methane, it won't explode. Unlike hydrogen sulfide, it has no smell. Its only property is that it's not oxygen. You walk into a pocket of it, and you don't even know it, Silas explains, his voice a low, cautionary tale. You take a breath, feels normal. You take another, then your lantern starts to gutter. The flame gets weak, looks like it's drowning. That's your only warning. You feel a bit dizzy, maybe a bit sleepy. You think you'll just rest a moment, and you never wake up. The image is terrifying in its gentleness. Not a violent explosion or a disgusting disease, but a quiet, sleepy death. To simply lie down in the filth and never get up again. He tells you a story. A common piece of sewer folklore. About a Tosher who was found sitting peacefully against a tunnel wall. His paw in his lap and his pokes at half full. He looked like he was just having a nap. But H.E. D been dead for 2 days, suffocated by an invisible cloud of choked damp. The exact science of these sewer gases was still in its infancy. While colliers and miners had long known about the dangers of fire damp and choke damp in the mines, their presence and behavior in the city's sewer system were less understood. There were endless debates in scientific journals about the chemical composition of sewer air. Was the danger from the sewer gas poison itself, a specific noxious element, or was it simply the absence of vital air, or oxygen? This academic debate, carried on in comfortable libraries and lecture halls, was a matter of immediate, physical reality for you. While the men of science argued about the why, you had to live or die by the what. To demonstrate the principle, Silas finds a long, discarded piece of wood and attaches a small candle to the end of it. He lights the candle and then very slowly lowers it down into a deep, sump hole at the side of the tunnel, a place where the water is stagnant and black. As the candle descends, its flame, brightened yellow at first, begins to shrink and turn blue. Then, about a foot above the water's surface, it silently extinguishes, snuffed out as if by an invisible hand. "See," Silas says, pulling the unlit candle back up. Choke taps the patient hunter. Sits and waits in the low spots. This is why, he explains, some of the most experienced assurers developed strange habits. Some would carry a small, caged bird, like a canary or a linnet, with them into the tunnels. The small birds, with their faster metabolisms, are much more sensitive to airborne poisons. A bird that suddenly falls off its perch is the most urgent of warnings to get out immediately. It's a cruel but effective early warning system. It's also an expensive one. A bird is a luxury you can't afford, so your own lungs and your lantern flame will have to do. This constant, nagging fear of the air itself changes the way you move. You start to think in 3 dimensions. You avoid the low-lying sections, stick to the main channels where the air is constantly moving, and eye every still, stagnant pool with deep suspicion. The sewer is no longer just a horizontal maze, it's a landscape of invisible hills and valleys of breathable air. You are learning that the greatest dangers of this job are the subtle ones, the ones that creep up on you, the ones that don't announce themselves with a roar, but with a faint, sweet smell, or a gentle, flickering flame, or a sudden, unexplained wave of drowsiness. The sewer, you realize, doesn't always try to beat you with brute force. Sometimes, it just tries to lull you to sleep. You've spent what feels like an eternity in the clammy darkness, learning to fear the air itself, but the sewer has more elemental threats in its arsenal. As you and Silas work a promising-looking bend in an old stone culvert, a new sound begins to intrude upon the usual gurgles and drips. It's a low, distant, and deeply resonant rumble, like far-off thunder. You pause, your pole halfway through stirring a patch of gravelly chew. "What's that?" you ask, your voice tight with a new kind of anxiety. Silas is already still, his head cocked, listening. The rumble comes again, closer this time, seeming to vibrate through the soles of your boots. He doesn't look scared. He looks furious. "Rain," he spits, the word like a curse. A real gully washer. "By the sound of it, we have to go. Now." He doesn't wait for you. He turns and begins moving back the way you came, his pace no longer the slow, methodical shuffle of a hunter, but the quick, splashing stride of a man in a desperate hurry. "Come on, nerd, move." He barks over his shoulder. You abandon your work instantly. The thought of a potential half-mini forgotten. The distant rumble is growing into a steady, continuous roar, and it seems to be coming from everywhere at once. The entire subterranean world is vibrating with it. On the surface, a sudden, violent downpour is a mere inconvenience. People run for cover under awnings, open their umbrellas, and complain about the dreary London weather. But down here, that same rain is an existential threat. The city above you is a vast, impermeable surface of rooftops, cobblestones, and paved streets. Every drop of rain that falls on it is funneled, through a million drains and gutters, directly into the sewer system, and it's all heading your way. The tide is still out. Silas shouts, his voice echoing frantically. We might have a chance to make the outfall, but we have to beat the surge. The surge is what Tosher call the flash flood, the tidal wave of rainwater that comes roaring through the tunnels after a heavy storm. It's a wall of water, powerful enough to sweep a man off his feet, slam him against a wall, or hold him under until his lungs give out. It moves with terrifying speed, filling the smaller tunnels from floor to ceiling in a matter of minutes. To be caught in the surge is a death sentence. Your slow, careful progress from before is a forgotten luxury. Now, it's a frantic, sloshing race against time. You barely use your trier, relying on a desperate memory of the path you took. The water around your legs, once a steady, predictable current, is beginning to quicken. It pulls at you with a new urgency. The water level itself is rising, no longer at your waist but creeping up your chest. It's getting colder, too, infused with the fresh chill of the rain. The roar is deafening now. It's not a distant sound anymore. It's here, in the tunnel with you, a living, breathing monster of sound and vibration. You can hear the hiss and crash of thousands of gallons of water pouring in from the street-level sewers all around you. You pass one of the side pipes you denoted earlier, and it's no longer a gentle trickle. It's a churning, brown waterfall, pounding into the main channel and adding its volume to the growing flood. Panic, cold and sharp, begins to set in. Your lungs burn, not from gas, but from exertion. Your legs, numb with cold, feel like lead. Every step is a monumental effort against the strengthening current. Silas is a few yards ahead, his lantern frantic, bouncing light in the chaos. He's yelling something, but you can't make it out over the roar. You stumble, your hobnail-led boot slipping on a greasy stone. You go down on one knee, and the rising water surges over your shoulder, soaking you completely. The shock of the cold is breathtaking. For a terrifying second, the current threatens to pull you under. You plant your pole and use it to haul yourself back to your feet, sputtering and gasping. The water is now flecked with foam and carrying a new kind of debris. Leaves, twigs, horse droppings, and all the other surface filth of London, washed fresh into your world. You are inside a flushing toilet. Historians and engineers will later study the hydrology of Bazalgette's system, creating complex charts and models to predict flow rates during storm events. They will use terms like peak discharge and scouring velocity. The debate for them is academic. Did Bazalgette's design adequately account for the most extreme rainfall, or were there unforeseen choke points in the system? You are currently experiencing peak discharge firsthand, and you can confirm, with some authority, that it is absolutely terrifying. Silas has reached one of the walkways. The narrow brick ledges running along the side of the main tunnel. He hauls himself out of the main channel, his movements clumsy with haste. Up, he screams, his voice cutting through the din for a moment. Get out of the flow. You scramble towards the ledge, the water now a powerful, churning torrent that threatens to tear the pole from your grasp. You dig your fingers into the slimy brickwork of the wall, finding a handhold, and pull yourself up onto the relative safety of the walkway. You lie there for a moment, gasping for air, your heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. The main channel, where you were standing just seconds ago, is now a raging, brown river, carrying large pieces of debris, bits of wood, a discarded crate, at an alarming speed. To have been in that would have meant being broken against the next bend in the tunnel. You haven't escaped. You just bought yourself a few minutes. The water is still rising. Perched on the slimy walkway, You watch in horror as the water level continues its relentless climb. The roaring torrent in the central channel is now licking at the edge of your precarious brick refuge. The air is thick with a fine, cold spray, and the sound is an all-consuming wall of noise. You are trapped, with a raging river on one side and a slick, weeping brick wall on the other. It's filling too fast. Silas yells, his voice raw. The outfall will be underwater. We can't go forward. Your heart sinks. The way out is blocked. Your frantic race was for nothing. You look at Silas. His face a mask of grim calculation in the bouncing lantern light. The fear is there, in his wide eyes, but it's overshadowed by a lifetime of hard-won experience. He's been here before. Suddenly, he points down the walkway. This way, there's a side pipe, an old one. It goes up. HES already moving. Half crouching as he runs along the narrow, slippery ledge. You scramble after him, your waterlogged boots feeling impossibly heavy. The walkway is treacherous, coated in a film of slime that offers almost no purchase. You keep one hand pressed against the tunnel wall to steady yourself, your fingers sliding through the cold, greasy film. Ahead, you see what he was pointing to, a small, dark, circular opening in the wall, about 4 feet in diameter. It's an ancient tributary, a feeder pipe from a bygone era, positioned higher up than the modern ones. A small but steady stream of water is gushing from it, adding to the flood. But the pipe itself isn't yet submerged. It's an escape hatch. A filthy, uninviting, terrifying escape hatch. As you get closer, you see them. At first, you think it's just debris, a dark, shifting mass at the entrance to the pipe. But then the mass moves, and you see the individual shapes, dozens of them, hundreds, rats, a living carpet of them, pouring out of the side pipe. They're asleep, wet bodies riding over one another. They are fleeing the rising water in the smaller tunnels, using this old pipe as their own emergency exit. You recoil in disgust, a primitive, deep-seated revulsion taking hold. They are huge, some of them as big as small cats, their eyes glinting like tiny, wet jewels in your lantern light. They ignore you completely, their single-minded purpose to escape the flood. They squeak and scrabble, their claws making a ghastly scratching sound on the brick, as they spill out onto the walkway and then disappear into cracks and crevices in the main tunnel wall. Don't mind them, Silas shouts. They know the way. They're heading for high ground. HES, referencing the old Tosher wisdom HED shared on your first day. Trust the rats. They are the true natives of this underworld. Their instincts, honed over countless generations, are a more reliable map than any piece of paper. If they are fleeing this way, it means this way leads to safety. The sight of this writhing mass of vermin is the stuff of nightmares. Londoners have a morbid fascination with the sewer rat. The penny dreadful-less and sensationalist newspapers are full of lurid tales about them. Stories of giant, mutant rats, growing to monstrous sizes in the dark, feeding on the city's foulest waste. They whisper of rat kings, a horrifying, and likely mythical, phenomenon where a group of rats become bound together, their tails tangled and knotted, forming a single, multi-bodied creature. Historians and biologists will later dismiss most of these as fanciful exaggerations, a projection of the city's anxieties onto the creatures that thrived in its filth. But as you watch this tide of sleek, muscular bodies pour out of the pipe, the myths don't feel so far-fetched. Silas doesn't hesitate. He wades through the last of the fleeing rats, their bodies bumping against his legs, and ducks into the mouth of the pipe. Then here, it's our only chance. You take a deep breath, fight down the wave of nausea and revulsion, and follow him. The space is horribly tight. The round brick walls press in on all sides, and you can barely lift your head. The water here is only a few inches deep, but it's fast-moving, and the smell is suffocating. It's the concentrated musk of 1,000 wet rats. A sharp, ammoniac stench that catches in the back of your throat. You are crawling through the rat's own private corridor. The walls are coated not just in sewer slime, but in the greasy residue of their fur. You crawl forward, your lantern casting a claustrophobic circle of light just ahead of you. The pipe seems to go on forever. A perfect, dark, rat-scented too. The roar of the main tunnel fades behind you, replaced by the sound of your own ragged breathing and the scraping of your clothes on the brick. This is a new kind of terror, not the grand, roaring terror of the flood, but a quiet, crushing, claustrophobic fear. The thought of being stuck here, wedged in this tight, dark space, is almost enough to make you scream. But you keep crawling, following the dim, distant light of Silas's lantern, putting your faith not in a brilliant engineer or a city government, but in the desperate, primal instinct of a sewer rat. The crawl through the rat run is a timeless, suffocating agony. Every scrape of your knees on the rough brick, every lung effluent of the foul, musky air, feels like it lasts an hour. The pipe slopes gradually upwards, which is both a blessing and a curse. It means you're moving towards the surface, away from the flood, but it makes the crawling itself a grueling, uphill battle. Your back and shoulders scream in protest from the unnatural, hunched posture. After what feels like an eternity, the pipe opens out into a small, brick-lined chamber, no bigger than a cupboard. It's a junction box of some kind, a forgotten node in the ancient sewer network. Silas is already there, slumped against a wall, trying to catch his breath. You collapse out of the pipe after him, gasping, every muscle in your body trembling with exhaustion and relief. The chamber is still deep underground, but compared to the pipe, it feels as spacious as a ballroom. The roar of the flood is a distant, muffled jumble now. You are, for the moment, safe from the surge. But as the immediate, life-threatening panic subsides, a different, more insidious fear begins to creep in. You look at your hands in the lantern light. They are covered in a latticework of small cuts and scrapes from the rough bricks of the pipe. Your knuckles are raw, and your hands, like the rest of you, are coated in a thick layer of indescribable filth. It's not just mud and water, it's the greasy leavings of the rats, the centuries-old slime of the buried river, and the fresh, raw sewage of the flood. Silas coughs, a deep, rattling sound that seems to shake his entire frame. In the dim light, his face looks pale and waxy. Don't touch your face, he rasps, between coughs. Don't put your hands near your mouth. It's the most important rule of the sewers, more vital than any unspoken law of territory. It's a rule you have probably already broken a dozen times without thinking, wiping sweat from your brow or shielding your face from a splash of water. Down here, the enemy isn't just in the water. It is the water, this filthy liquid you've been wading in, that you're currently soaked in, is a teeming, invisible soup of disease. Typhoid, dysentery, and the most feared of them all, cholera. Londoners call it King Cholera. It's a terrifying, swift, and brutal killer. One day you're fine. The next you're afflicted with violent sickness and diarrhea, your body losing fluids at an alarming rate. It can reduce a healthy man to a shrivel, blue-tinged husk in less than 24 hours, and the sewers are its kingdom. The great scientific debate of the era is raging on this very topic. The establishment, the men of the General Board of Health, are staunch believers in the miasma theory, that cholera is spread by the foul air, the stinking fog that rises from the filth. But a small, persistent group, led by a doctor named John Snow, is pushing a radical, and too many, ridiculous, idea that the disease is transmitted not by what you breathe, but by what you drink, that the killer is a tiny, invisible poison that lurks in contaminated water. A few years before the Great Stink, Snow had famously proven his theory by mapping a cholera outbreak in the Soho district. He traced the cases back to a single, Contaminated public water pump on Broad Street. He convinced the local authorities to remove the handle from the pump, and the outbreak subsided. It was a landmark moment in the history of public health and epidemiology. But even with such compelling evidence, the miasma theory held firm. The idea of germs was still decades away from general acceptance. This debate, however, is meaningless to you right now. Whether the killer is in the air or in the water doesn't matter when you are literally submerged in the source of it all. Miasmatist or contagion ist. They would all agree on one thing. You are in a very, very bad place. Every cut on your skin is a potential doorway for infection. Every accidental splash of water near your lips is a game of Russian roulette. You suddenly feel a desperate, overwhelming urge to be clean. It's a physical craving, more powerful than hunger or thirst. You want to scrub your skin raw, to wash the memory of this filth from your body, but you are trapped in the heart of the contamination, with no clean water in sight. Silas seems to read your mind. He rummages in his own poke sack, past the lumps of scrap metal, and produces a small, tightly stoppered tin flask. He opens it and takes a small swig, then hands it to you. It's gin, cheap, fiery, and harsh. Kills the germs, he says. Though his voice lacks conviction, it's an old superstition, a Tosher's folk remedy. Whether it actually does any good is highly questionable. Some historians suggest the cheap, often contaminated alcohol probably did more harm than good. But in the moment, the burn of it in your throat is a small, welcome distraction. It's a ritual of purification, however ineffective. You hand the flask back. The immediate danger of the flood has passed, only to be replaced by the slow, creeping dread of the sickness that may already be taking root inside you. You have survived the sewer's sudden violence. Now you have to survive its patient poison. You wait in the small, damp chamber for what feels like hours, the gin doing little to warm you or calm your nerves. The only sounds are the distant, fading rumble of the floodwaters and Silas's persistent, rattling cough. The silence stretches, thick and uncomfortable. You are two solitary creatures, huddled in a forgotten pocket of the city's vast, dark underside. Eventually, Silas pushes himself to his feet. Water will be down enough, he grunts. Can't stay here forever. Move up. The journey back is a slow, cautious reverse of your frantic escape. You crawl back through the rat pipe, which now seems blessedly empty, and emerge onto the walkway of the main tunnel. The scene is one of devastation. The water level has dropped significantly, but it's still higher and faster than normal. A thick, brown line of scum high on the walls marks the flood's peak. The air is thick with a new, raw smell of churned up earth and decay. The walkways are coated in a fresh, deep layer of stinking silt. As you begin the long, weary trek back towards the river outfall, you start to see them. Other lights, faint, flickering glows in the distance, both ahead and behind you. The flood is over, and the other inhabitants of this world are emerging from their own hiding places. You pass another Tosher, a man you don't recognize, who is painstakingly scraping the fresh layer of silt from the walkway into his sack. The flood, for all its terror, is also an opportunity. The churning waters have disturbed the deepest layers of chew, potentially bringing long-buried treasures to the surface. This man is not wasting any time. He gives you and Silas a wary, silent nod as you pass, his eyes guarded. He is a competitor. But then you see others, further down, near a junction with another large sewer. A small community has formed. A handful of men and women are gathered on a wider section of the central reservation, their lanterns creating a small island of light in the gloom. They are not all Tosher's. You recognize the tattered clothes and baskets of the mudlarkers, who normally stick to the exposed riverbanks. The flood has driven them down here, into the main arteries, in search of whatever the surge has washed in. There's a woman with a sieve, patiently washing handfuls of silt in the sewer current, her eyes peeled for anything that glitters. There's a young boy, no older than 10, armed with a stick with a nail on the end, poking at a pile of debris, hoping to snag a piece of cloth or rope. These are the shore workers, the desperate ecosystem of the riverside poor. The flood has blurred the lines between their traditional territories, forcing them together in this shared, temporary space. Silas seems to know some of them. He exchanges a few gruff words with a stooped old man who is examining a piece of driftwood. They don't talk about the terror of the flood. They talk about what it brought down. "Any copper?" Silas asks. The old man shakes his head. "Nothing but wood and rubbish. The brewery upstream must have lost a few barrels. Though, smell it. It's a strange sort of fellowship, a community of outcasts, bound by their shared proximity to filth and their shared hope for a lucky find. They are rivals, yes, all competing for the same limited resources. But there's also a sense of shared experience, a weary understanding of the hardships and dangers of their lives. They might not share their finds, but they will share information. A warning about a loose brick, a tip about a newly formed sandbank, a rumor about a flushy patrol. The existence of this complex social world is something the surface dwellers are almost entirely unaware of. To the average Londoner, the people who work the sewers and the riverbanks are a single, undifferentiated mass of the poor. Pitiable or frightening, but ultimately invisible. They don't see the hierarchies, the territories, the specialized professions, the Toshers, the mudlarkers, the dredger men who work from boats, the pure finders, the historical record, written by the literate and the wealthy, often lumps them all together. But down here, the distinctions are sharp and meaningful. A Tosher might look down on a mudlark, who in turn might feel superior to a pure finder. It's a finely graded ladder of desperation. You and Silas don't linger. You are not part of this particular crew, and your presence is a silent intrusion. You continue on your way, leaving the small island of light behind. The encounter, brief as it was, leaves an impression on you. You had thought of this as a solitary pursuit, a battle between you and the sewer. But you are not alone. There is a whole society down here, a shadow city with its own citizens, its own economy, and its own rules, all flourishing in the dark, just beneath the feet of the oblivious world above. It's a lonely life, but you are, strangely, not the only one living it. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime, you see a new kind of light. It's not the warm, flickering yellow of a lantern, but a pale, grey, and beautifully natural luminescence. It's the mouth of the sewer outfall. It's daylight. You emerge from the tunnel, blinking, into the weak afternoon sun. The air, which on your way in had seemed a thick soup of coal smoke and city smells, now feels impossibly fresh and clean. You take a deep, greedy breath of it. The tide is low again. The mudflats exposed and steaming gently in the cool air. The world seems brighter, louder, and infinitely more spacious than you remember. You are filthy, not just dirty, but comprehensively, biblically filthy. You are covered from head to toe in a drying crust of grey-brown slime. You smell so foul that a passing dog on the riverbank gives you a wide berth, whining softly. Your rucksack, however, is not empty. It hangs heavy at your waist, bulging with the pathetic, grimy treasures you risked your life for. The day's work is not yet over. Now you have to turn this rubbish into rent. Silas leads you away from the river, back into the familiar labyrinth of city streets. But now, you are acutely aware of how you appear to the people you pass. A well-dressed lady, seeing you approach, pulls her skirts tight and crosses to the other side of the street, her nose wrinkled in disgust. A pair of street urchins stop their game to stare at you, their expressions a mixture of awe and revulsion. You are a monster from the underworld, walking in the daylight, and the stench of your world is an invisible barrier around you. Your destination is a street in a district so poor and decrepit it makes your own lodgings look like a palace. Here, the buildings lean against each other for support, and the very air seems saturated with poverty. This is the realm of the rag and bone men. Silas stops before a shop that is little more than a wide, dark doorway leading into a cavernous, junk-filled storeroom. A crudely painted sign hangs above it, depicting a jumble of rags, bones, and scrap metal. This is where the bottom of London's economy cashes out. The man who emerges from the gloom is a perfect match for his establishment. He is large and greasy, with small, shrewd eyes that seem to appraise everything for its scrap value, including you. He is the intermediary, the bridge between the scavenged waste of the city and the industries that might have a use for it. Silas empties his poke-sack onto a large, filthy burlap sheet on the ground. A pile of rusted iron, corroded copper, chunks of coal, and old rope spills out. The rag and bone man pokes at it with the toe of his boot, his expression one of profound disappointment, as if this is the most pathetic collection of refuse he has ever had the misfortune to witness. This, you realize, is part of the negotiation. Now it's your turn. You undo the ties on your own sack and dump its contents. Your single penny, your bone button, your bent nail, your shard of pottery, and a small handful of other metallic odds and ends. It looks even more pitiful than Silas's haul. The man circles the two piles. He separates the metals with a practiced hand. Copper in one pile, iron and lead in another. He holds up a piece of rope, testing its strength. He barely glances at the bones and the rags. His entire focus is on the metal. This is what has real value. Copper can be melted down and reused. Iron has a price, however low. Even the nails in your boots are a known quantity to him. The value of these scavenged materials is a fascinating and complex subject that historians of industry study. They track the fluctuating prices of scrap metal and its role in feeding the ravenous furnaces of the Industrial Revolution. They debate the efficiency of this informal recycling network, this vast, disorganized system for reclaiming the city's lost materials. For the man in front of you, it's not academic. It's a simple, brutal calculation of weight, quality, and what the foundries are paying this week. After a few moments of silent appraisal, he names a price. A ridiculously, indulgently low price. Silas, who has been silent until now, lets out a derisive snort, and so begins the ritual. It's a low voice, sullen argument, a back and forth of feigned outrage and weary resignation. Silas points to a particularly thick piece of copper pipe. The rag and bone man points to a heavily rusted piece of iron. It's a performance they have both perfected over years of practice. Finally, a figure is agreed upon. It's still painfully low, but it's more than the opening offer. The rag and bone man disappears into his gloomy shop and returns with a handful of coins, which he counts out into Silas's palm. Silas then turns to you. He meticulously calculates his 10% commission for the gear and guidance. Then he hands you your share. It's a pathetic little collection of copper coins. You stare at it in your filthy palm. This is it. This is what you get for facing death by drowning, disease, and asphyxiation. It's enough for a few days' rent. It's enough for a hot meal or two. It is, crucially, enough to survive. But it is nowhere near enough to escape. You have sold your fear and your filth for a handful of pennies. As you walk away from the shop, the weight of the coins in your pocket feels both like a victory and a profound, soul-crushing defeat. You have won today's battle, but you know, with absolute certainty, that you will have to go back down into the darkness and fight it all over again tomorrow. With a few coins clinking in your pocket, a fragile buffer against starvation, you part ways with Silas. He gives you a curt nod, melts back into the slum's labyrinth to spend his earnings on whatever ghosts he is trying to quiet. And you are left alone. You should be heading back to your own miserable lodgings. But you're not ready. Not yet. You feel a strange pull to see the other side. To remind yourself of the world that exists in parallel to your own. You start walking, aimlessly at first, but your feet carry you westward, away from the grimy, industrial east and towards the city's heart of wealth and power. The transition is gradual, then sudden. The streets widen. The buildings stand straighter, their facades of clean, pale Portland stone replacing the soot-blackened brick of your neighborhood. The air itself seems to thin out, the acrid smell of poverty replaced by the scent of expensive perfume, horse leather, and money. You have crossed an invisible line. Here, the cobblestones are swept clean. The shops have gleaming plate glass windows displaying silks, jewelry, and books with gold leaf titles, handsome cabs, pulled by well-groomed horses, cluttered by, carrying passengers who don't look at the street, only at their destination. You are an anomaly here, a walking stain on this pristine canvas. Your filth, which was commonplace in your own district, is now a spectacle. People stop and stare. A gentleman in a top hat and fine wool coat gives you a look of such profound disgust it's almost comical. A pair of ladies, their faces shielded by delicate veils, hurry past, clutching their purses. You are not just poor. You are a physical embodiment of the dirt and disease they fear. A reminder of the unpleasantness they have paid so much to keep at a distance. You find yourself standing near one of the city's many new, ornamental sewer grates. It's an elaborate piece of cast iron, a swirling, decorative pattern of leaves and vines. It's designed to be beautiful, to blend seamlessly into the elegant streetscape. Through the gaps in the ironwork, you can see the darkness. You can smell a faint, familiar whiff of the world you just left. You are standing directly above a tunnel, perhaps one you even walked through. A carriage pulls up nearby, and a family alights. The father is broad and confident in his tailored suit. The mother is a vision in crisp, clean muslin. Their children, a boy and a girl, are dressed in immaculate miniature versions of adult clothing. They are laughing, their faces brightened and lined by hunger or fear. They are standing just a few feet away from you, on the other side of an impassable chasm of class and experience. The little girl, curious and bold, points a white-gloved finger at you. "Mama, look at that dirty man," she says, her voice clear as a bell. The mother quickly shushes her, pulling her away with a horrified look, not at you, but at the potential for contamination, as if your poverty were a contagious disease. And in that moment, the full, crushing weight of the system comes down on you. These people, living their clean, bright, comfortable lives, are the source of your livelihood. Their waste, their dropped coins, their discarded scraps, are the raw materials of your profession. You are the bottom feeder in their gilded aquarium, the very structure of their society. The vast gulf between their wealth and your poverty is what makes your wretched job not only possible, but necessary. This stark contrast between the two cities of London was a source of endless fascination for Victorian social commentators. Writers like Charles Dickens and journalists like Henry Mayhew dedicated their careers to documenting the lives of the poor, attempting to explain the world of the slums to their shocked middle-class readers. They debated the causes of poverty. Was it a moral failing, a lack of character on the part of the poor, or was it an inevitable, structural outcome of the new industrial economy? This question, the condition of England question as it was called, was one of the central anxieties of the age. Standing there on that clean pavement, stinking of the sewer, you are the living, breathing embodiment of that question. You are not lazy. You are not immoral. You have just spent a day performing work more dangerous and disgusting than this wealthy gentleman could possibly imagine. And your reward for that labor is a handful of pennies and the scorn of his children. You feel a surge of something. Anger, shame, a bitter, hopeless resentment. You turn away from the beautiful street, from the clean, oblivious people, and begin the long walk back east. You cross back over the invisible line, the streets narrowing again, the air growing thick and familiar. You are returning to your world, the world of shadows and grime. The brief, painful excursion into the world of light has only served to remind you how deep and dark your own world truly is. You belong to the city beneath the city, and it seems there is no escape. The next few days, and the weeks that follow blur into a grim, monotonous routine. You wake up cold. You meet Silas in the pre-dawn gloom. You descend into the stinking darkness. You wait. You probe. You scavenge. You survive a near miss. A crumbling brick that falls inches from your head. A sudden swell in the water from a sluice gate opening upstream. You endure the filth, the cold, the constant, gnawing fear. You haul your pathetic findings to the rag and bone man. You collect your pittance. You eat. You sleep. You repeat. Your poke sack fills with the mundane currency of the sewer. Corroded iron, bits of rope, waterlogged chunks of coal, then the occasional, blessed copper coin. It is a life lived on the absolute margin of existence. But sometimes, the sewer gives up more than just scrap metal. Sometimes, it offers surprises, items that break the monotony and hint at the strange, secret lives of the people in the city above. These are the finds that Tosher talk about. The stories that are traded in low voices over a pint of cheap ale. One day, while working a relatively new section of tunnel beneath a prosperous residential square, your tire scrapes against something that isn't a rock or a piece of brick. It's a soft, heavy lump. You reach down into the murky water, your fingers closing around what feels like a bundle of cloth. You haul it up. It's a canvas bag, tied tightly at the neck with a piece of string. It's heavy. For a dizzying, heart-stopping moment, you think you found it. The jackpot. A bag of coins. A highway's lost loot. With trembling fingers, you untie the wet knot. You turn the bag upside down over the wide canvas pouch of your apron. What spills out is not gold. It's a collection of tarnished, mismatched silverware, a few forks, a heavy soup ladle, and a butter knife with a mother-of-pearl handle. It's not a fortune, but it's far more valuable than anything you found before. You stare at the collection, a story forming in your mind. This wasn't dropped by accident. This was thrown. You imagine a disgruntled butler or a thieving housemaid, pockets full of stolen silver, getting spooked and ditching the evidence down the nearest drain. The sewer is not just a repository for lost things. It's a place for deliberately hidden things. A vast, dark locker for the city's secrets and its crimes. Silas examines the silver with a practiced eye. Good hole, he grunts. We'll need a different buyer for this. Not the rag and bone man. There are fencers who'll take this sort of thing. No questions asked. The sewer has its own specialized economy, its own black market. On another occasion, in an old, crumbling section of the buried river fleet, you find something far more unsettling. Your pole strikes something with a dull, hollow clunk. You feel around in the deep silt and your fingers touch something hard, smooth, and strangely curved. You pull it free from the mud. It's a bone, a human bone, a femur, long and yellowed with age. You drop it as if it were red hot. Silas just shrugs. The fleet's full of them, he says, his voice devoid of any shock. This whole city's built on a graveyard. He's right. For centuries, London's churches were horribly overcrowded. Bodies were buried in shallow graves, one on top of the other. Heavy rains would wash away the soil, exposing the dead, their remains sometimes finding their way into the old rivers and drains. Finding bones was a common, if unnerving, part of a Tosher's life. But this discovery is different. A little further on, you find another bone, and then another. A rib cage, partially intact. A jawbone, its teeth still grimly in place. It's not just a single, displaced bone. It's a skeleton, scattered by the current. The question of how so many human remains ended up in the sewers is one that both fascinated and horrified the Victorians. Official reports blamed the ancient, overflowing burial grounds, but the popular imagination, fueled by sensationalist novels, dreamed up more sinister explanations. The victims of foul play, their bodies disposed of in the one place no one would ever think to look. The truth, as historians now know, is a bit of both. The sewers were indeed humping ground for the city's grim and violent secrets. For every skeleton from a disturbed plague pit, there was likely another from a more recent, more personal tragedy. You don't collect the bones. There's no market for them. You leave them where they lie, a silent, grim monument in the darkness, and move on, trying to shake the cold dread that has settled in your stomach. The strangest find of all comes a week later. In the main channel, caught on a snag of debris, is a small, locked, little brown box. It's a lady's dressing case. Its leather warped and swollen from the water. It's too well made to break open without ruining it. So you carry it, a heavy, mysterious burden, all the way to the surface. Back in the relative privacy of a dark alley, Silas manages to pry the lock with the tip of a knife. Inside, nestled on a bed of what was once silk lining, is not jewelry or money, but a collection of pristine, white, human teeth, dozens of them, a complete set. And then some. You and Silas just stare at it, utterly baffled. Why would someone throw a box of teeth into the sewer? Is it the collection of a strange dentist? The raw materials for a set of high-quality dentures? A bizarre, sentimental keepsake? It's a perfect, unsolvable mystery. It has no value. It tells a story you can't even begin to guess at. It's a perfect example of the sheer, unpredictable weirdness of the city above. You close the lid and leave the box in the alley. Some secrets, you decide, are best left at the bottom of the river. The strange and sometimes grim discoveries are a break from the routine, but they don't pay the rent. Most days are a slow grind, a battle for scraps. It's during the long, quiet hours, standing waist deep in the cold, dark water, that the stories begin. The community of the underworld, for all its suspicion and rivalry, has a rich old tradition to share this. Mudlarkers and F-Eloshers, in their brief, wary encounters, trade more than just information. They trade tales, ghost stories, myths, and legends, perfectly suited to the echoing, claustrophobic darkness of the tunnels. These are the narratives that help to pass the time, to explain the unexplainable, and to give a shape to the constant, formless fear that is every sewer worker's companion. Silas is a master storyteller, whose voice a low, gravelly rasp that seems to rise from the sludge itself. As you work, he shares the lore of the tunnels, a curriculum of dread passed down from one generation of Tosher to the next. He tells you about the Banshee of the Fleet. The story goes that in the oldest sections of the buried Fleet River, if you stand still and listen on a moonless night, you can sometimes hear the sound of a woman weeping. A soon, mournful sound that seems to come from the stones themselves. Some say it's the ghost of a woman who threw herself into the river centuries ago. Others say it's just the sound of the wind, caught in a particular configuration of pipes. But the legend persists. Old Tosheras will tell you that to hear the banshee is a terrible omen, a sign that someone is about to die in the tunnels. You find yourself listening for it. A new, superstitious dread added to your collection. Then there are the creature stories. You've already met the rats, but the legends speak of other, stranger inhabitants. Silas tells you about the sewer swine. The story, a favorite piece of London folklore, claims that a pregnant sow once fell into the sewer system and gave birth to a litter of piglets in the dark. These pigs, and their descendants, are said to have adapted to their subterranean environment, growing pale and savage. Their eyes becoming small and weak, they are rumored to haunt the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the system. A feral herd of ghost pigs feeding on the filth. Is it true? Almost certainly not. Historians and folklorists will trace the sewer swine legend back for centuries, viewing it as an urban myth, a manifestation of the public's fear and fascination with the unseen world beneath their feet. But Silas tells the story with a completely straight face. He claims to have seen one once, a flash of pale pink in the corner of his lantern light. before it vanished into a side tunnel with a guttural squeal. You don't know whether to believe him, but the image is a powerful one. There are also stories of lost treasures, the legends that fuel the tiny flame of hope in every Tosher's heart. Every man who works the sewers knows the tale of the Spanish gold. The story goes that during the turmoil of the Napoleonic Wars, a Spanish merchant, fleeing the city, dropped a chest of gold doubloons down a drain to hide it from thieves. He was killed before he could retrieve it, and the chest, so the legend says, still lies somewhere in the mud and silt of the old tunnels, waiting for a lucky finder. No one has ever found it. Of course, it's almost certainly a myth, a Tosher's version of El Dorado, but the story serves a purpose. It's the ultimate what if. The dream of the one big score that could lift a man out of this life forever. It's the reason you give that pile of chew one more stir, the reason you wade a little further into that dark, uninviting tunnel. The hope, however faint, is the fuel that keeps this miserable engine running. The most personal and chilling stories, however, are the ghost stories. The tunnels, Silas explains, are haunted by the men who died in them. He tells you about old Bill, a flusher who was swept away by a surge in the 1842. His body was never found. No, most say, his ghost still walks the walkways, his lantern flame burning with a cold blue light. To see old Bill's blue lantern, the story goes, is a final warning that a flood is coming. Whether these stories are true is irrelevant. Their truth lies in their function. They are a way of mapping the dangers of the environment, of turning a random, chaotic threat like a flood or a gas pocket into a narrative with a character and a warning. The banshee warns of death. Old Bill warns of floods. The sewer swine represent the feral, untamable nature of the underworld. These aren't just spooky tales. They are a survival guide, a shared language of fear. You listen, you shiver, and you learn, and you find yourself, in the quiet moments, looking over your shoulder, half expecting to see a flash of pale pink, or a faint, blue, flickering light in the oppressive, story-filled darkness. The legend of the Spanish gold is just that, a legend. A fairy tale to keep spirits up, but sometimes a rumor surfaces that feels different. It's more specific, more recent, and it travels through the sewer network with the speed of a flash flood. It starts as a whisper. A mudlark claims to have heard it from a dread German, who heard it from a disgruntled jeweler's apprentice in a pub. The story is that a wealthy merchant, returning home drunk from a high-stakes card game, was accosted by thieves on the new Grand Victoria embankment. In the struggle, his satchel was torn open. He fought off the attackers, but a small, heavy pouch containing his winnings, a mix of gold sovereigns and a few uncut gemstones, tumbled from the bag, bounced across the pavement, and disappeared through the ornate grating of a storm drain. This is not a centuries-old legend. This is fresh. The location is specific. The prize is plausible. The story spreads like a contagion through the community of shore workers. Every Tosher, every mudlark, every scavenger with access to the tunnels hears it. And every single one of them feels the same electrifying jolt of greedy, desperate hope. The embankment drain. Silas muses, his voice low and thoughtful as you huddle in a quiet alcove, away from the main current that would feed into the main low-level interceptor. Section 3. He knows the sewer map in his head better than any engineer. A frantic and declared race begins. The unspoken laws of territory, the carefully observed boundaries and claims, begin to fray at the edges. The lure of a score this big is too powerful. It's a gold rush in the dark. When you and Silas make your way towards the section of tunnel beneath the embankment, you find you are not alone. The area, usually quiet and worked by only one or two local Toshers, is now crowded. Lantern lights bobbined weave in the darkness like a swarm of angry fireflies. You see familiar faces, the beard, old twitchy, and many you don't recognize. The usual grim, silent courtesy has been replaced by a tense, Electric atmosphere of suspicion. Men work close to each other, but their shoulders are hunched, their eyes constantly flicking towards their rivals. No one speaks of the rumor directly. To do so would be to admit you believe it, to show your hand. But everyone knows why they are here. The work is frantic. Men are not just patiently sifting the chew. They are attacking it, digging with their bare hands, turning over every rock, scraping every inch of the brick floor. The usual slow, rhythmic pace of Tosh finding has been replaced by a feverish, competitive energy. The air is thick with tension. A shiv in the dark is no longer an accident. It's a challenge. A man's lantern beam strained too close to another's working area is an accusation. You see two Toshirs, their faces illuminated in a dramatic chiaroscuro, engaged in a low, snarling argument over a few square feet of sludge. A fight seems imminent, but it dissolves into angry muttering. No one wants to waste energy fighting when there is treasure to be found. Silas, ever the strategist, pulls you away from the main throng. Fools, he grunts. The gold won't be where he dropped it. The flow would have carried it, and it's heavy. It wouldn't have gone far, but it would have settled. He leads you to a spot 100 yards downstream from the main search area. It's a place the others have overlooked. A section where the tunnel curves sharply under deep, stagnant-looking pool has formed on the inside of the bend. If it's anywhere, it's in there, he says, his eyes gleaming with a hunter's intensity you've never seen in him before. The problem is, the pool is deep. The water is almost up to your neck, and the bottom is a thick, sucking morass of ancient silt. It's a dangerous spot. To work it properly, one of you will have to go in deep, almost submerging themselves, feeding around blindly in the freezing, filthy sludge. It is, of course, a task that falls to you. You hand your lantern to Silas, who holds it high, directing the beam into the black water. You take a deep breath, the foul air filling your lungs, and lower yourself into the pool. The cold is absolute, a shocking, total immersion that drives the air from your body in a gas. The sludge at the bottom sucks at your boots, trying to hold you, to claim you. You begin the search. It's a blind, disgusting process. You hold your breath, duck your head under the surface, and sweep your hands through the thick, lumpy silt. Your fingers touch things you don't want to identify, sharp edges of broken glass, the soft squish of organic decay, the slickness of things long dead. You come up, gasping, shaking with cold, and then go back under, again and again. This obsessive search for a single, life-changing prize is a recurring theme in the history of the pool, whether it's a gold rush, a lottery, or the whisper of a sunken treasure. The dream of instant wealth has always been a powerful motivator for those with nothing to lose. Some economists argue it's an irrational behavior, a poor understanding of probability. But they are not standing in a sewer, freezing to death. For you, the slim, irrational hope of the gold is the only thing warming you up. It's the only thing that matters. After 15 minutes of this hellish, fruitless search, your numb fingers close around something new. It's small, cold, and has a coarse, fabric texture. It's a pouch, a small, heavy pouch. Your heart stops. Your fingers, numb and clumsy with cold, tighten around the small, heavy bag. For a moment, you don't move. You just kneel there in the deep, freezing sludge, the murky water up to your chest, touching a small lump of possibility. The roar of your own blood is louder than the gurgle of the sewer. Could this be it? After all the filth, the fear, the endless, grinding work. Could this actually be it? You get your feet under you, the sucking mud fighting your every move, and you stand up, breaking the surface of the pool like some creature from a forgotten myth. You hold the pouch aloft. It's a small, drawstring bag made of thick canvas, blackened and heavy with water. It fits perfectly in the palm of your hand. Silas leans forward, his face a mask of disbelief and drawl, naked hope. His lantern beam fixes on the bag, making the water droplets on its surface glitter like 1,000 tiny diamonds. "Well, I'll be damned," he breathes, his voice a hoarse whisper. But you are not alone in this moment of trial. A splash and a grunt from the darkness nearby make you both freeze. Another lantern beam cuts through the gloom, pinning you with its glare. A figure emerges from the shadows of the main tunnel, wading towards you. It's the beard. The hulking, territorial Tosher you saw on your very first day. And his face is not friendly. "Find something, did we?" The beard rumbles, his voice like stones grinding together. He holds his own tray not like a tool for finding, but like a weapon. "Funny, I was just about to check that spot myself. Seems to me anything found in this section belongs to me." He's lying. You both know it. This area is a grey zone, not part of his usual claim. But the rumor of the gold has dissolved the old rules. The law of the jungle has taken over, and he is the biggest animal in this part of the jungle. Silas steps forward, placing himself between you and the beard. He holds his own pole defensively. "No, hold on, Jedediah," Silas says, his voice steady despite the situation. "You know as well as I do this is open water. We found it fair. I'm feeling flexible on the definition of fair tonight." The beard snarls, taking another heavy, splashing step towards you. He is bigger than both of you combined. A mountain of wet, wool and grimy muscle. He's not just after the pouch. He's making a statement. He's re-establishing his dominance now that the gold rush has thrown everything into chaos. Panic and anger war within you. You have just faced down the filth, the cold, and your own fear to find this. You are not about to hand it over to a bully. You clutch the pouch tighter, your knuckles white. What happens next is a clumsy, pathetic, and terrifying sore bully. The beard langues, not at Cyrus, but at you, trying to grab the hand holding the pouch. You stumble backwards, deeper into the pool, the cold water splashing up to your neck. Silas shoves his paw into the beard's path, trying to trip him. The big man bats it away with a roar of frustration. It's not a clean, heroic fight. It's a desperate, ugly scuffle in waist-deep, freezing filth. The floor is slick and uneven. Your movements are slow and hampered by the water. The only light comes from the two lanterns, one held by Cyrus, one on the beard's chest, casting wild, dancing shadows that make the scene even more confusing and monstrous. The beard swings his heavy pole. It's not aimed to injure, but to intimidate, to knock the prize from your grasp. The iron the ad whistles through the air and smashes into the water next to you, sending a foul-tasting spray into your face. You flinch back, slipping on a loose stone. You go under. The world becomes a silent, black, freezing nightmare. The shock of the cold is total. You can feel the weight of the water pressing down on you. Panic explodes in your chest. You thrash wildly, your feet finding no purchase in the soft silt. Your hand, however, remains clenched, a fist of iron around the small canvas bag. That you will not lose. A hand grabs the collar of your coat and hauls you, spluttering and gasping, back to the surface. It's Silas. He's pulled you back from the brink. While you were underwater, the confrontation changed. Silas, seeing you go under, abandoned all pretense of a defensive standoff. He did the one thing that could end the fight quickly. With a desperate heave, he swung his own lantern by its leather strap and smashed it against the side of the beard's head. There was a dull, sickening thud. The beard's lantern, strapped to his chest, was extinguished as he staggered back and fell with a tremendous splash. His head hitting the water, the tunnel is plunged into near total darkness. The only light now coming from Silas's lantern, which he managed to keep from going out. You hear a groan and a furious sputtering. The beard is not unconscious, but he is stunned, disoriented. The fight is gone out of him. He stumbles to his feet, holding a hand to his head, and glares at you both with pure hatred, without another word. He turns and swashes away into the darkness, a defeated, dripping giant. You have won. You are left panting, freezing, unshaking, in the light of a single lantern. The silence that descends is profound. You look at Silas, his chest heaving. He just risked everything for you, for this pouch. The nature of violence among the poor is a topic Victorian moralists love to pontificate on, often describing it as brutal and animalistic. Historians, however, offer a more nuanced view, seeing it not as mindless savagery, but as a desperate-to-love negotiation and survival in a world without laws or police to protect you. You have just survived one such negotiation, and you are still holding the prize. The silence in the tunnel is thick and heavy, broken only by your own chattering teeth and the slow drip of water from the vaulted ceiling. The beard is gone. His angry splash is fading into the distance. You are alone with Silas, the single lantern casting long, flickering shadows that make the sewer seem even larger and more empty than before. You look down at your hand. You are still clutching the small, heavy pouch, your knuckles white. The adrenaline of the fight begins to fade, replaced by a trembling, bone-deep cold and a wave of giddy, disbelieving excitement. You did it. You found it. And you kept it. Let's see it then, Silas says, his voice low, red-dressed. IGS breathing heavily, the exertion and the tension of the confrontation having taken their toll. Before we freeze to death or Jedediah comes back with his friends. He's right. This is no place for a celebration. You wade out of the deep pool, your legs feeling weak and shaky, and clamber onto the relative safety of a slimy brick walkway. You sink to your knees, the rough surface pressing into your wet trousers. Silas holds the lantern closer. It's worn, yellow light falling on the small, pathetic-looking bag in your hands. The drawstring is knotted tight, swollen and stiff from its time in the water. Your fingers are too numb and clumsy to untie it. With a grunt of impatience, Silas pulls a small, rusty knife from his pocket and carefully saws through the taut string. The mouth of the pouch falls open. You both lean in, your heads almost touching. You tilt the bag, and its contents spill out into your open palm. It's not a cascade of glittering diamonds. It's not a pile of perfectly minted gold sovereigns. What lands in your hand is a jumble of small, heavy, metal discs, dark and coated in a layer of grime. For a heart-stopping moment of disappointment, you think they're just lead tokens, or worthless washers. But then, Silas picks one up. He rubs it vigorously on his sleeve, scraping away the centuries of filth. He holds it up to the lantern, and it gleams. It is soft, deep, unmistakable yellow. It's not the bright, brassy shine of a new penny. It's the heavy, warm, lustrous glow of pure gold. You pick one up yourself. It feels heavier than it should, dense and real. You wipe it clean. The image on its surface is worn and smooth, but you can just make out the profile of a king you don't recognize. His features softened by his journey through the city's digestive tract. You pour out the rest of the contents. There are maybe 15, 20 gold coins, and mixed in with them are a few small, dull-looking stones. They look like bits of dirty glass. Silas picks one up, holding it right up to the lantern flame. He turns it slowly. As the light passes through it, it catches an internal fire, twirling off a brief, brilliant flash of blue and white light. An uncut diamond. You stare at the small pile of wealth in your hand, and you start to laugh. It's not a happy, joyous laugh. It's a wild, unhinged, half-sobbing sound of pure, cathartic relief. All the fear, all the filth, all the cold, all the degradation. It has all led to this small, heavy, glittering pile of hope. The legend was true. The rumor was real. You have found the big score. This is the dream of every person who has ever sifted through rubbish but to pocket. The lucky chance. The one event that can catapult you out of the grinding cycle of poverty. Sociologists and historians often study the culture of poverty, debating whether the poor are trapped by their circumstances or by a mindset of fatalism and short-term thinking. But they rarely get to witness the moment when circumstances suddenly, miraculously, overcome. This moment is the exception that proves the rule. The lightning strike that makes everyone else keep standing out in the rain. Silas claps you on the shoulder. His grip surprisingly strong. There's a look on his face you've never seen before. It's not just relief or excitement. It's a kind of weary vindication. As if a GS spent his entire life telling a story that no one believed. And he has finally found the last page. "We did it, Ned," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "We actually did it." The small pile of golden gems in your palm feels like the warmest thing in the world. It's a tiny, concentrated sun in the endless, freezing darkness of the sewer. It's a key. It's an escape. It's a future. But you are still in the sewer. You are still cold, wet, and miles from the surface. The treasure is found, but it is not yet safe. The most dangerous part of the journey may have just begun. The triumphant laughter dies in your throat, replaced by a sudden, cold wave of paranoia. The gold in your hand feels less like a treasure and more like a target. The darkness of the sewer, which was your workplace, is now a landscape of potential threats. The beard could be lurking around the next bend, or worse, he could have gone to fetch his cronies, and even now be setting an ambush between you and the exit. Every distant splash, every echo, sounds like approaching footsteps. "We can't go back the way we came," Silas says, his mind already working. The brief moment of elation giving way to grim, practical strategy. The outfall will be watched. The whole damn shore working community will have heard that commotion, will be walking into a nest of sharks. He's right. The news of a real find, confirmed by your fight with the beard, will have spread. Every desperate scavenger between here and the Thames will be waiting, hoping to get a piece of your prize. To them, you are no longer a fellow sufferer. You are a lottery winner, and they all feel they deserve a share of the ticket. Silas quickly stashes the golden gems back into the small pouch, tucking it deep inside his own poke sack, beneath a layer of worthless scrap iron. "If we're stopped," he mutters, "you know nothing. You saw nothing. Let me do the talking." He turns and leads you not back towards the river, but deeper into the labyrinth, away from the main, familiar channels. He's taking you on a route you've never been on before, through a series of smaller, older, and more treacherous tunnels. This is his private map, the one he's built over a lifetime of exploration, a network of escape routes and secret passages. The journey is a nightmare of anxiety. You are moving as fast as you can, but the terrain is difficult. You wade through narrow, coffin-like passages where the water is thick and stagnant. You climb over partial collapses, heaps of rubble that threaten to shift and slide under your weight. You squeeze through cracks in ancient walls, entering forgotten chambers that haven't seen a human being in decades. Your single lantern is a fragile beacon in the oppressive, absolute blackness. If it goes out, you are done for. You will be lost forever in this brick-lined tomb, your pockets full of gold that you can't eat or drink. The treasure, which moments ago felt like a key to freedom, now feels like a curse, a heavy weight dragging you deeper into danger. The historical accounts of the sewer system are full of tales of people getting lost, maintenance workers, explorers, even adventurous children who dared each other to venture into the drains. Some were found weeks later, their bodies washed up at the pumping stations. Others were never found at all, becoming permanent residents of the underworld. The sewer does not give up its secrets, or its victims, easily. At one point, Silas stops dead. He holds up a hand for silence. You listen. You can hear it too. Voices, faint, but getting closer. They are coming from the direction you were heading. It's a patrol, not to CRS. The sound is too organized. The voice is too clear. It must be the FL ushers, the official sewer maintenance crew. This is a new and terrible dilemma. If the FLOSers find you, they won't try to rob you. They will arrest you. Trespassing in the sewers is a crime, and a search of your belongings would reveal the pouch. How would you explain that? I just found it. Sir, honestly, they would assume it was stolen, that you were criminals hiding in the tunnels. You would be thrown in a gale so foul it would make the sewer seem like a health spa. Silas makes an instant decision. He points to a dark, gaping hole in the floor just ahead. It's a vertical shaft, a manhole that has lost its cover, dropping down into a lower level sewer. A rusty iron ladder is bolted to the side of the shaft, its rungs disappearing into the blackness below. Down, he whispers. It's the only way. You don't question him. You swing your body into the shaft, your feet finding the first rung of the ladder. It's slippery with slime and feels horribly insecure. You begin to climb down, your back scraping against the curved brick wall of the shaft. The voices above get louder. You hear the heavy tread of their boots on the walkway. You descend into a new layer of darkness, the air growing colder and fouler. Below, you can hear the rush of a powerful current. You are climbing down into one of the main, deep-level interceptors, the superhighways of the sewer system. The ladder seems to go on forever. Your arms ache, your hands are raw. Finally, your feet touch a narrow, wet ledge. You are at the bottom of the shelf. Silas is right behind you. You have escaped the FLOSers, but your escape has taken you deeper, into a faster, more dangerous part of the system, even further from the safety of the surface. The perilous journey to the light is not getting shorter, it's getting longer. You are a wealthy man, in theory. But right now, you would trade all the gold in your pocket for a single, safe step on the cobblestones of the city above. The deep-level interceptor is a terrifying place. It's a vast, perfectly circular tunnel, even larger than the ones you've been in. And the river flowing through it is not a gentle stream but a black, swift, and powerful torrent. The sound is a constant, intimidating roar. This is the sewer's main artery, the collected filth of a million people, moving at speed. To fall here would be the end. There would be no swimming, no rescue, just a swift, dark journey to the pumping stations. You and Silas are huddled on the narrow maintenance sledge, the torrent rushing past just inches from your feet. The air is a maelstrom of fine, stinking spray. You have to shout to be heard over the noise. Where are we going? You yell, your voice sounding thin and weak against the roar. Silas points down the tunnel, into the roaring darkness, the Abbey Mills pumping station. It's the only way out from down here. Abbey Mills. It's one of the architectural marvels of the Victorian age, and one of the great unsung heroes of London. It's a massive, ornate pumping station, built in a bizarre and beautiful Gothic Byzantine style, often called the Cathedral of Sewage. Its function is to lift the sewage from these deep-level tunnels up to the outfall sewers that release into the Thames further downstream. It's a crucial link in Bazalgette's great machine, and, apparently, it's your only exit. The walk along the narrow ledge is the most nerve-wracking experience of your life. The walkway is slick. The roar is disorienting. And the sheer, sucking power of the water beside you is a constant, hypnotic threat. You fix your eyes on Silas's back, trying not to look at the churning black river, and you just keep moving, one foot in front of the other. After what feels like miles, a new smell cuts through the sewer stench. The sharp, metallic smell of hot oil and coal smoke, and a new sound joins the roar of the water. The rhythmic, colossal, thumping heartbeat of machinery, clank thump, clank thump. It's the sound of the giant steam engines that power the pumps. You round a bend and see it, a vast, cavernous chamber, lit by the hellish orange glow of boiler fires. This is the underside of the pumping station. You see the immense pipes, big enough to drive a carriage through, sucking the sewage up from the channel. You see the colossal pistons of the steam engines rising and falling in a slow, relentless rhythm. It's a vision of industrial hell. A noisy, hooked, and profoundly intimidating place. You have to get from the sewer tunnel, through this mechanical nightmare, and up to the surface without being seen. The station is staffed 24 hours a day by engineers and stokers. Silas leads you from the walkway onto a metal catwalk that runs through the heart of the machinery. The heat is intense, and the noise is deafening. A stoker, his face black with coal dust and his bare torso shiny with sweat, shovels coal into the roaring mouth of a boiler, his back to you. You slip past him like ghosts. You're filthy. Ragged clothes, a strange contrast to the polished brass and painted iron of the magnificent machines. Finally, Silas points to a small, unassuming iron door set into a far wall. A service exit. It's your gateway back to the world. He puts his hand on the latch, pauses, and looks at you. His face is grimy, exhausted, and streaked with sweat, but his eyes are clear. Once we're through this door, he says, his voice low and serious, we part ways. We don't know each other. We never worked together. We sell our shares separate. It's safer that way. You nod. It's the smart play. To ragged men with a sudden, unexplained fortune would attract attention. One at a time, they might just get lucky. He pulls the door open. A blast of cool, clean night air hits you. It smells of damp earth and grass. You step through the door and find yourself in a quiet yard behind the magnificent pumping station. Above you, the moon is bright in a clear sky, and the ornate towers of the Cathedral of Sewage are silhouetted against it. You have made it. You are out. You are safe. You are rich. Silas reaches into his sack and pulls out the small, precious pouch. He opens it and, without ceremony, pours half of the contents into your grubby hand. A pile of gold coins and a few of the dull, magical stones. Your share. You look at the treasure in your hand, and then at the old man. You have been through floods, faced down thugs, crawled through rat-infested pipes, and navigated the bowels of the earth together. He saved your life. And now, it's over. Good luck. Lad, he says, and gives you a single, firm nod. He turns and disappears into the shadows. A chubby, resilient ghost melting back into the night. You stand alone in the moonlight, the rhythmic thumping of the great engines behind you, your hand full of impossible wealth. The stench of the sewer clings to you, a deep, unforgettable perfume. It's the smell of your fear, your labor, and your salvation. It's the smell of your fortune, and you have a feeling it's a smell that will never, ever wash off. The first few days of your new life are a disorienting blur. You do not rush to spend your fortune. The fear and paranoia of the sewer are still too fresh. You are a creature of the shadows, and the sudden glare of prosperity is blinding. Your first act is to find a new room, not in the fine squares of the West End, but in a slightly better, quieter street. A place where no one knows you. It has a door that locks, a window that opens, and a bed with a mattress that isn't filled with straw and secrets. To you, it feels like a palace. Your second act is to get clean. You go to a public bath and you scrub your skin until it is red and dry. You wash your hair again and again. But as you stand there, clean for the first time in months, you can still smell it. A phantom scent, the ghost of the sewer's foul breath, clinging to the inside of your memory. You realize with a sinking feeling that Silas was right. It will never truly wash away. You burn your old clothes, the stiff, stained uniform of the Tosher. You watch the flames consume the canvas apron and the heavy trousers, a ritual cleansing of your old identity. You buy new clothes, simple and sturdy, but clean. When you look at yourself in a shop window, you see a stranger, a pale, thin man with haunted eyes, but a stranger nonetheless. The gold coins are a constant, heavy presence in your pocket. You take them to a coin dealer, not all at once, but one or two at a time, spread out over different days in different shops. You learn to feign a casual air, to invent stories about a small inheritance from a distant relative. Some dealers are suspicious, but money is money. They give you banknotes and silver shillings for your strange, worn, golden discs. The diamonds are harder. You sell one, just one, to a jeweler in a back alley who specializes in not asking questions. He gives you a fraction of its worth, but it's still a staggering sum of money. The rest are the stones. You keep hidden away, too scared to sell them. You have escaped the sewer, but the sewer has not escaped you. You walk the streets of London, a free man with money in his pocket, but you see the city in a new way. You see the cracks in the pavement, the grime in the corners. You notice every sewer grate, and you can't help but look down into the darkness, a part of you still mapping the tunnels below. You see other Toshers, sometimes, from a distance. You see them emerging from the riverbank at low tide, their poles in hand, their backs bent. You see the same weary desperation in their eyes that you once had in your own. You feel a pang of something, pity, guilt, a strange sense of survivor's camaraderie, but you do not approach them. You cannot. You belong to a different world now. The world itself is changing around you. The city is growing, modernizing. More of the old, crumbling sewers are being replaced by Bazalgette's grand, efficient system. The city is becoming cleaner, more organized. The regulations are getting stricter. FL ushers and sewer patrols are more common. The wild, lawless frontier that you explored is being tamed, piece by piece. The profession of the Tosher, the freelance, unregulated sewer hunter, is beginning to die out. The risks are becoming too great, the rewards too slim. The city has less tolerance for the likes of you and Silas. The age of the scavenger is slowly giving way to the age of the municipal employee. Historians will look back at this period as a turning point in urban history, the moment when a city, through massive engineering and bureaucratic control, finally gained mastery over its own waste. They will write about the public health benefits, the drop in mortality rates, the rise of sanitary science. They will see it as a story of progress, of civilization conquering filth. But for you, it feels like the end of an era, the closing of a dark and dangerous book. The strange, secret world that nearly killed you, and then saved you, is vanishing. The community of the shadows is being disbanded, its citizens forced to find other, equally desperate, ways to survive. The legends of the sewer swine and the Spanish gold will fade, replaced by dry engineering reports and sanitation statistics. You never see Silas again. You sometimes wonder what happened to him. Did he drink his fortune away? Did he find a quiet cottage somewhere and live out his days in peace? Or did the call of the tunnels prove too strong, luring him back for one last hunt? You'll never know. He remains a ghost, a gravelly voice and a steady presence in your memory. Your own future is a blank page. The money gives you options you've never had before. You could buy a small shop. You could emigrate, start a new life in America or Australia. You could do anything. But you find yourself paralyzed, a man caught between two worlds, belonging to neither. You are no longer a Tosher, but you are not yet anything else. Years pass. The city of London continues its relentless march forward, shedding its old skin and growing a new one of iron, glass, and stone. The memories of your time in the underworld begin to soften. The sharp edges of fear and disgust worn down by the gentle friction of time. You have become someone else. You own a small, quiet bookshop in a respectable, if unfashionable, part of the city. It is a life of serene, dusty silence, the absolute antithesis of the roaring, where darkness you once knew. You had a wife, a home. You are a man of modest means, a respected member of your community. No one who meets you, this quiet, slightly reserved bookseller, could ever guess at the secrets you carry. No one could imagine you kneeling in freezing filth, fighting off a giant with a lantern, or crawling through a plate filled with rats. That part of your life is a locked room in the house of your memory. But sometimes, on a rainy night, When you hear the gurgle of water in the drainpipe outside your window, a flicker of the old world returns. The phantom smell of the sewer will rise in your nostrils, so real you almost gag. You will feel a memory of the cold water around your legs, the weight of the trowel in your hand. One evening, a young journalist comes into your shop. He's an earnest, well-spoken young man, part of a new generation of writers documenting the city's hidden corners. He is writing a series of articles on the vanishing London, the old ways of life that are being swept away by progress. He's heard tales, he says, of the sewer hunters, the Toshers. He speaks of them as if they were figures from a dim and distant past, like knights or alchemists. They say it was a whole secret society, the journalist says, his eyes bright with romantic fascination, with their own language, their own kings. They say they fought battles with giant rats and found lost treasures. It's all terribly fascinating, but I can't find anyone who actually remembers them. It's as if they've all just vanished. You stand behind your counter, polishing a pair of spectacles, your face an impassive mask. You could tell him everything. You could tell him that the secret language was just grunts and whispers, that the kings were just bullies like the beard, that the battles were clumsy, pathetic scuffles in the dark, and that the treasure was sometimes real. You could tell him about the symphony of smells, the terror of the surge, the silent threat of the gas. You could describe the exact weight and feel of a gold coin, still warm from the sewer's foul breath. You could tell him about Silas. You could give him the story of a lifetime. But you don't. What would be the point? He would not understand. He would turn it into a sensationalist story. Another penny dreadful tale of adventure and grotesque. Why? He cannot comprehend the reality of it. The bone-deep cold, the gnawing hunger, the constant, grinding fear, and the utter, abject desperation that would make such a life not an adventure, but a reasonable career choice. The truth of the Tosher's life is not a story of romance. It's a story of survival. Historians of the future will face this same problem. They will have the official reports, the engineering diagrams, the sensationalist newspaper articles, and the social commentary of men like Mayhew. But the direct, first-hand accounts of the Toshers themselves are almost non-existent. They were, for the most part, illiterate. Their stories were oral, their knowledge passed down in the darkness and lost when they died. Their entire subculture exists now only as a faint, muddy footprint in the historical record. The academic world will forever be debating the details of your life, a life you know in your very bones. I'm sorry, you say to the young journalist, your voice quiet and even. I'm afraid I can't help you. That world is long gone, I imagine. He thanks you and leaves, disappointed. You watch him go, another man searching for a story he can never truly find. Later that night, you lock up your shop. You walk home through the gaslit streets. You pass over a bridge, and you stop, looking down into the dark, reflecting waters of the Thames. You think of the great brick tunnels snaking their way beneath the city, the hidden rivers still flowing in their eternal night. You think of the Cho, the thick layer of silt and memory, still slowly accumulating on the sewer floor, somewhere down there, in that cold, dark, silent world. A bent nail, a shard of a plate, and a collection of human bones are lying in the mud. They are your artifacts, the forgotten evidence of a life you once lived. You are a fading memory yourself, a ghost from a buried city. You turn away from the river and walk home. The weight of a few small, dull stones in your pocket a secret, heavy comfort. And so, the current of our story slows, its journey through the dark tunnels coming to a gentle rest. The echoes of footsteps on rushing water begin to fade, replaced by a deeper, more profound quiet. The light from the lantern, which has been our guide for so long, now softens, its flame shrinking to a small, sleepy ember, casting a warm and gentle glow. You can feel the great city above, its noise is distant and muffled, as if heard from the bottom of a deep, Come well. The tension has gone now. The race is over. The treasure is safe. There is nothing left to do but drift in this peaceful, quiet darkness. You are deep beneath the surface of the waking world now, in a place of stillness and repose, where the only thing that matters is the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, slow and steady, like a tide going out to a common silent sea. Our journey together tonight ends here, in this quiet place. Should you need another tale to accompany you further into rest, my library of stories is always open for you. May your dreams be kind. Good night.